We will now reconvene the regular meeting for Lompoc City Council, Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Ball.
Present.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Present.
Councilmember Cordova.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Victor Vega.
Here.
Mayor Janelle Osborne.
Here. Mr. Malave, any reportable action from closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. City Council met in closed session to discuss the one real property negotiations listed on the agenda. Council discussed that item, gave direction to staff, but no reportable action was taken.
Thank you. In this time of accelerated COVID-19 infections and the additional losses we have had in our community, I'd like to first have a moment of silence for those that we have lost in 2020, not just to COVID, but from our community that has made it difficult to mourn. So if you would join me in a moment of silence for those we lost in 2020. Thank you. Now, if you'll please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So to kick off the new year and January, we will have a proclamation regarding the initial honorary month of January's Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. I will go ahead and read the proclamation, and after conclusion, our interim fire chief, Brian Fetterman, will say a few words. January as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. The International Association of Firefighters and the Firefighter Cancer Support Network have designated January as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month to provide firefighters the necessary tools and guidance to develop life-saving protocols for cancer prevention and support those with a cancer diagnosis within their departments. And whereas firefighter occupational cancer is the leading cause of line-of-duty deaths in the fire service, in 2019, more than 75% of the names of firefighters added to the IAFF Fallen Firefighter Memorial Wall of Honor in Colorado Springs were of members who died from occupational cancer. And whereas bringing increased public awareness to occupational cancer in the fire service will help generate greater legislative support for states and provinces to establish presumptive disabilities for all cancers affecting firefighters. And whereas research shows that firefighters are more likely to be diagnosed with certain types of cancer than the general public, a trend that two fire service organizations hope to reduce, the IAFF and the FCSN are educating about best practices and resources to reduce the impact of cancer on firefighters. And whereas the month-long campaign of safety stand-downs are training briefs created to highlight the effects of occupational cancer and focus on topics of prevention and mitigation. Topics include the scope of the cancer problem, best practices on prevention, leadership tactics to help prevention, and skills to help survivors of occupational cancer. And whereas cancer caused 66% of the career firefighter line-of-duty deaths from 2002 to 2019. Heart disease caused 18% of career LODDs for the same period. Firefighters have a 9% higher risk of cancer diagnosis and a 14% higher risk of dying from cancer than the general U.S. population, according to research by the CDC. And whereas the cancers mostly responsible for this higher risk were respiratory, GI, and kidney. And whereas locally our previous fire chief, Lineal White, passed away from job-related cancer, and Captain Chris Martinez has returned to work following colon cancer deemed work-related. Now, therefore, I, Janelle Osborne, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, California, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2021 as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. This is truly near and dear to my heart that we focus on this and assist our department with this, because Retired Chief Lineal is one of the few individuals that asked me to run for public service and was always there and supportive, and his loss is felt deeply, not only by myself, but by the department and our community. Thank you, Interim Chief Fetterman.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council, for taking time out tonight to recognize this month as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. I would also like to just thank the staff from the city and the council through budget efforts. We've made some great strides as an organization to work on education, training, and mitigation to help enhance the health and wellness of our personnel. We're not quite there yet. We still have improvement to go, and we'll be presenting some of that in the upcoming budget of ways to continue to mitigate more risks within the station. But it is a deep thing for our organization and the fire service in general. So again, I appreciate the conversation and the awareness from the council. Thank you.
Thank you. So just as a reminder to the public before we go to the city manager report, that our council meetings are currently still closed to in-person attendance, but you can watch the meetings on TAP TV, Channel 23 Comcast. You can listen to them on KPEG 100.9, or you can watch via Zoom feed. The link is on cityoflompoc.com. The Zoom feed is not interactive. It is for viewing only, and you may call during oral communication or the specific item on the agenda at 805-875-8201 before the close of the public comment on each agenda item. City manager report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Per a former council request, just coming back each time because it's COVID and they keep extending the orders, the request was to keep everyone informed on what the current order is. So the governor, or I should say his public health office, extended the stay-at-home order for another 3 weeks, and they said at a minimum. So the current extension is now set to expire January 19th, which is our next council meeting, just coincidentally. But because of this order, the commissions and committees would also need to be canceled due to the stay-at-home order for the month of January. So the last reading I was able to see, they just said it's possibly going to be extended again after this January 19th date. So I'll keep updating you as we come along. Anything new comes along, I'll definitely shoot out an email if there's a change that's good or not so good. But that's sort of where we are. I think everybody's aware of it and seeing it day after day. Another request was just a quick update on our streaming service. We do have a Zoom meeting set up. It's probably not the best sound. We're trying to improve upon that. But the good news is we will have streaming if everything goes as planned at the next council meeting. Unfortunately, during the holidays, the contractor who does the installation, they had some COVID issues, and now we have a COVID issue. So just trying to get over all that. But it looks like we'll have everything ready by the next meeting. The date that we hope to have it all done is the 15th, so about 4 days before the next meeting. So that should be up and running as we've had in the past with all new equipment that will last us a long time. Something I wanted to bring up, and we do this, not just us, most cities do this after different elections, and that's, revisiting council goals. Every time we have an election, even if people don't change seats, we try to revisit the goals every 2 years, see if there's any changes in prioritization. Things change in the community, things change in the nation, the state, so we always try to revisit to see if any changes come down on the priorities or some new goals that might replace others. Given COVID, it's hard to get people in the room. We can't have the community. If you remember the last time we did this, we had a very full, we opened the back doors and had everybody in here. We're not going to be able to do that this year. Even into February, if they relax it a little bit, we still can only have about 12 people maximum, so our participation level would be very, very small compared to what we've had in the past. So I'm going to propose and take a poll, if I may, that what I would like to do is bring back the current goals that were set about 2 years ago now, bring them forth, have the council either reaffirm them or make some minor tweaks to them if that's the case. With some of the budget issues we've had, definitely with COVID, we haven't probably gotten through all of them at this point. So I think there's probably still work to be done on some of those goals. So it might be a best at this time this year to look at it as an affirmation of what we had before, and then have the staff keep moving forward on that. And during that discussion, there might be some priorities underneath that we can discuss, and maybe ask staff to come back with suggestions under a priority. What can we do with our budget situation? What can we do to hit the different goals? So if that is something you might like, if I can just maybe do a show of hands that yes, we can do that. If not, I can bring it back as an agenda item and do a much more in-depth discussion on that and what we want to see.
So just to be clear, the request is for a future agenda item, not to make a decision, but it's just to decide
Right,
whether.
so it would be to bring back, sorry, that was a little confusing. Bring back an agenda item that just looks at what the previous goals were, reaffirm them, and go from there. Or do we want to attempt to have a true goal-setting session and try to do it, with Zoom? I will say I've had issues trying to find a facilitator to help, set the tone of the meeting and keep it moving forward. Most don't want to come out right now and do an in-person, and it's a little harder when you have a facilitator that you just see a picture of them up on the screen. So that's why I was proposing to have it just an affirmation of it.
Councilmember Cordova.
I would like, well, let me ask you this first, Mr. Troop. Is there a deadline of when these need to be completed by, or?
No, this is all, it's a typical, for most cities, once an election's done,
Right.
try to do it before a budget, so when the budget comes along, you can try and set the goals in the budget for that. But there is no, we don't have to do them at all, actually, if you didn't want to.
Yeah. I do remember the goals from before, and I think that those are very important, and you're right, we haven't gotten through them. I would like to see us figure out a way. This whole COVID thing, it's going to continue to be a challenge. And so we have to strive to find a way to engage the community in the midst of the restrictions that we have, rather than just the idea of us rubber stamping something that we had before. I'm not really fond of that. And then I think with new council also, I think they might want to look at it a little bit more in depth and have the opportunity to maybe put in their input. So I would like to see it come back as a council meeting or on a council agenda so that we could have further discussion on it. And if we agree as a council that, yeah, we'd like most of the items that are on there, then that's fine. But rather than just simply, rubber stamping it, in my opinion, and I say that with all the respect.
Councilmember Starbuck.
If we go down that route, I'd like it to be a special meeting, just because of the time frame. Usually we used to do them on a Saturday, so it was, all departments, and we went for it then.
Councilmember Cordova.
Yeah, I would be okay with that, but also maybe there is a way that we can figure out how to do like an educational component out to the community to where this is what our goals were. Is there any input? Like find a way either through SurveyMonkey or something to get people the opportunity to at least click and say, what would be your,
Yeah, we can actually, that's not a bad idea at all. We can do that. Why don't I bring it back as an agenda item, and then we can really brainstorm on different ideas.
I think bringing it back as an agenda item where we're reminded what the goals are and with suggestions as to how we could connect with the community under COVID would then help us make a decision on whether or not a special meeting is needed or not. And that way, you have clearer direction from us as to what kind of information you should gather from the survey.
Yeah, okay.
Any other comments or feedbacks? Councilmember, Paul?
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm pretty flexible on this. I definitely would love some input. I think that's fair. But again, during COVID, if it is 95% of the current list that we're actually affirming and we're making small tweaks and adjustments, maybe that doesn't need a special meeting. But if we find out that there needs to be quite a few tweaks and adjustments and new direction, then we probably need to spend the time. Be my thoughts.
Councilmember Vega?
Yes, I agree with bringing back the past goals. I think they were very good goals, and I think they're pretty basic. So I think it's going to be pretty easy here. If somebody wants to tweak them or whatever, I think that would be great. And again, I do agree with you. let's take a look at it to see if a special meeting's necessary, because if everybody has a consensus that these goals are still good with a few tweaks, we may not need it.
Okay.
Clear enough?
So we'll schedule for a regular agenda, and then from there, we'll see if we need to tweak it more than what a normal meeting would do. So then we can do a special meeting.
Yeah, if the discussion goes above and beyond of massive changes and
Right.
something we need community feedback, then I think a special meeting would be needed so that we'd have time to do the survey. The survey, if we all agree that the goals are still the same, the survey may turn into what kind of things would you like to see accomplished with the current goals? So it might completely change the discussion.
Okay. That was one. So then the last one is, it's a good news, sad news. And it's good news for the person, it's sad news for the city. I just wanted to express my thanks to Captain Jeff Edmond, who retired from Lompoc Fire after faithfully and honorably serving the community for over 31 years. So we're going to wish him well in his retirement. I know he's going to enjoy it. But on the good news, too, on the fire, the city did receive today, through a donation from the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation, a new skid mount pump for the rescue truck. The foundation, through their different fundraising efforts, purchased the pump for $26,000. So I just want to extend the city's entire appreciation to the foundation for this gift. That's a pretty big chunk of change. So, and that was my report for tonight.
Any other questions or concerns for the city manager? Councilmember Cordova.
Mr. Troop, with the stay-at-home orders being extended, I know that the city had put together a letter and it had been signed to send out to the state or the governor's office to request for a carve-out of this county, or, you know, in support of a carve-out of this county as a region or as part of the southern region. Did that go out, and do we have any feedback yet on that, or do we know roughly when we could expect any kind of feedback from
It did go out. It went 2 days late, after the meeting. It went almost quickly. It was signs sent out 2 days after. None of the 3 counties nor the cities that have also joined in, no one's received any kind of feedback. I'm going to guess that they're just going to ignore it and not respond. But I'll reach out to the county again. They have more of a direct line to the state through their public health office. I'm not holding out a lot of hope for it, though. Our county has gone up in hospitalization, so they'll probably look at different areas and say, no, the south is really bad. You guys are trending upward. But no, I've not heard anything back yet on that.
Okay, thank you.
We will now move on to the consent calendar item. If you would like to comment on consent calendar items. Oh, yeah. You want to turn your mic on?
I'm gonna have to back up. I'm sorry. I can't believe I did this. I'd like to take this time to introduce our new utility director. He's going to shoot me for this one. So we lost our utility director a year. I don't know. I lost track of how long it's been. I've been doing it on the side. We've had an interim person doing it for a little bit. It's been back and forth. We went out. We did a national search. We looked, and I think we found a very good person to come in and help us out. His name is Charles Berry. He goes by CJ. You can stand up in the back here. I'm going to let him speak if he wants to in a minute, but just some background. That's why I'm very excited. He was the manager of distribution services and maintenance operations for the Imperial Irrigation District in Imperial, California. He was the electric operations manager for the Truckee-Donner Public Utilities District. He was electric utility superintendent for the city of Lodi, who they also have their own electric company, just like we do. Engineering designer number 4 for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, which is a very large district up there, and was a designer for the, I can never say that, how do you, Snohomish County Public Utility District in Everett, Washington. And then his education blew me away too. He's got a PhD, Engineering and Technology Management, an MS in Management and Leadership, an MBA, and a BS in Management. So very well educated, lots of good experience, and I know he's ready to hit the ground running. So I don't know if you want to say any, you don't have to, but
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the warm introduction, and for the record, snow-home-ish. Anything that ends in ish in Washington means it'll be flooded by the river. So, but I'm very excited to be here. I know it was quite a long road to get here. I appreciate the patience from the city and the city manager. I had a little bit of a setback there, but managed to get here nonetheless. And I'm looking forward to hitting the ground running, and look forward to having fun and engaging with all of you and seeing what we can do to move the needle on your priorities. Thank you.
Welcome and thank you.
That was my last one.
Okay. All right, moving on to consent calendar. If you would like to comment on the consent calendar, you may call 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201, and remember to mute your PC, radio, or TV. Our consent calendar is considered to be routine and will be enacted after one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the council vote. Any items withdrawn from the consent calendar for separate discussion will be addressed immediately before the second oral communication near the end of the meeting. Were there any written communications on consent calendar?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Once again, public comment on consent calendar 805-875-8201. Seeing no one call, we will close public comment and bring it back to council. Are there any items you would like to pull? If not, I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Cordova.
I motion to approve consent calendar.
Councilmember Ball.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 4-1. We will now have staff presentations, announcements, and requests. Our first presentation is from our Community Development Director, Christy Alarcon, to present an update on Prop 68 funding grant per capita program. It's actually Mr. Guerrero.
Madam Mayor, the council, the audience at home, I'm Mario Guerrero, Recreation Manager, and excited for tonight to give you an update on the Beatty Park, the playground and fitness project. This is a CDBG and Prop 68 per capita funded project. And also, after we discuss this, I'll give you an update on our Prop 68 statewide the application process. So a little bit of the timeline, just for reference case. On February 12th, a request for proposal went out. On February 18th, we had a pre-proposal site meeting, and on March 12th, the bid closed, and on June 16th, the project was awarded, and on August 31st was the groundbreaking, and you can see we started with the grading of the project. This was the design that went to council, and as a design build then we did on this project. Once we started the moving the dirt, Beatty Park, uniquely being on that hillside, had a little bit of difficulty on that hill, so the topography on that, so staff and the contractor, we got together to see the best way to maximize in that area with keeping it flat. And we did a little bit of tweaking, but every element on the project, and we'll go through that, it is still there, but we had to make some changes, and the design, we had to flip-flop our fitness equipment that was up towards the top of the hill area, and put the the playground there, which was uniquely placed where the pathway here is an elevated, raised retaining wall with a ramp that is flush for wheelchair access. So it proved to be a better ADA access point for us on that. So this is the updated version. There will be quite of a turn here that there's going to be more of us putting the concrete pathway here when it's finished for us to meet that ADA, the requirements. And then here's a couple versions of the look, and as you can see, it has a stairway and the ramp that I spoke of there. Being uniquely in Lompoc, where this is, we added a wind wall here, and it's a unique, the wind wall, it was the first one that this company's done. It's a steel wind wall with laser cutouts, and we have here, you'll get a better look a little bit later, but it's a City of Lompoc welcome to Beatty Park, and it came out super nice. And then we'll have our 2 ping pong tables, the concrete, 2 more tables here with the checkerboards. And then this gives you another look at where our picnic structure is. We're going to have a little barbecue pit here, water fountain there. And again, that'll be a rentable facility for us for birthday parties or anything on that note. This kind of gives you a look at our fitness equipment here. And then we have a unique 4-bay swing set. We have a disc swing here. We have 2 regular, the traditional swings. We got 2 kid swings where you kind of just put the babies into the seat swing. And then we'll also have 2 double person kind of selfie swings where you can put your son or daughter in the swing and swing along with them. So it's going to be a little bit of things for everyone. And then here's some real pictures that were updated from the site, if you hadn't had a chance that didn't go out there yet. Again, picture of our fitness equipment. The big tower of the 5 to 12-year-old unit. It's a pretty challenging the playground system. I'll kind of get into that in a little bit, but I think the kids are going to have a great time on it. And here's an update of when they poured the concrete, and you kind of get an idea of the wind wall there. It's pretty impressive. And then this playground, it is a national, the demonstration site. It incorporates 3 elements to be a national the demonstration site, and we'll feature that through signage. There'll be a toolkit. There's a QR code so people can look on their phones so that they can see the online the site map, and then we'll have a Project Excellent Award for display. And again, the 3 are, the first one's the 7 principles of inclusive play, and then the play on of the promoting physical activity. You'll be able to see that with all the features that the kids will have to climb on, and really to get to the top of that elements, it really takes some physical activity, and then also outdoor adult fitness. And for the Beatty Park, the fiscal impact, the construction of the project will have no impact to the general fund. Again, it's funded by the Prop 68, the per capita of roughly 177,000, and CDBG 611 for a total project of 789,000. And the completion of the project, we're looking at mid-February at the latest, weather permitting. We don't see any rain coming up there. And this unit here, you'll see Myra and Chanel, the CDBG staff out there. That's kind of a merry-go-round for wheelchairs and also a seating area out there, so you can enjoy that with the wheelchair or just regular out there. I spun them around a couple times and they seem to enjoy it. And that's the update on the Beatty Park. We can take questions after, or did you want to move on to the statewide?
Go ahead and finish your presentation, then we'll
Okay.
set you up for some questions.
Okay. Just a little background. The Prop 68 statewide park program, round 3. There were 62 projects that were awarded in round 3, approximately 1 in 10 projects. There were 2.3 billion in requests versus the funded was 254 million, almost the 255 million. We did submit projects for JM Park and Pioneer Park. We weren't awarded on those, but we will be submitting in round 4. Approximately 80% of those projects that were awarded were brand new parks. So there are the 3 levels. There's the brand new parks. There's an expansion of parks. So like if you had a park and there was an empty lot for another acre, that's considered an expansion. And then ours that we're proposing, those are on the 3rd tier, the renovation aspect of parks. So with round 4, this is the final round. Available funding for this round is the 395 million, and the deadline to apply is March 12th. We will be applying for JM and Pioneer Park again, as well as College Park. So that's a new one that we are putting in for round 4. The maximum then that you can apply for Prop 68 is 8.5 million, and the least is 200,000. And the unique thing about the Prop 68 is that you don't have to have any of the matching funds. So it's a very unique grant. So we're excited about that. The eligibility, the criteria, you either have to have a medium income in the half-mile radius of the park of 56,982 or less, or less than the 3 acres per 1,000 residents within that half mile of the park. Our projects are as follow. The College Park is 31,727 and 0.51 acres per 1,000. So it qualifies on both. The JM is 42,031 and 0.87 acres. And Pioneer is 60,690 and it qualifies on the 2.32 acres. So those are the 3 parks then that we've designated for submitting applications. So College Park is our new addition, and one thing that we did learn on the last round, we tried to do a lot of stuff in-house, but one was hiring RHA landscape and architects. I think that this gives us a better the competitive push for the applications. They have done many throughout the state during the first of the 3 rounds, and their company has helped cities that have been awarded. So they've been hired for the design aspect, for this new park. Then to get the maximum amount of points, you have to have 5 of the community meetings. So along with staff that they conducted for those meetings, and they will also provide a cost analysis for the application for all the different amenities that are going in to the park. So we did have 4 meetings. 3 were via Zoom and one was in person. And I think the in-person one is going to give us a lot of extra incentives in that application, because we were able to engage the community on an aspect here where we had layouts of College Park, and then the community got to do cutouts and put different elements that they wanted to see at that park in there and submit them. Also, we had video from the TV, and also doing the interviews with people out there. So that was kind of one of the big elements of Prop 68, is getting the community involved. Our next meeting will be the January 14th at 6 p.m. Via Zoom. And so the first of the three meetings were really a gathering information, and then on our fourth meeting, we put out the two designs from the community, and then coming up in the fourth meeting is a combination of all those meetings all put together of what the community wanted. So this will be taken to the January 14th meeting and kind of tweaked out and get a little bit more of the public comment. With the Prop 68, they're not holding, if you're awarded, you're not held to the exact elements or the color schemes. If you say that you're going to have a playground, then that's fine. If you're going to have some half-court basketball, then that's fine. They don't really want to know how many tables or chairs, just as long as those are included. So it's a pretty broad process. Even with the skate park elements, these, if we're awarded, they could change. We just basically have a skate park, and then we can bring the community back after we're awarded to really get into the deep detail of what they would want to see out there. During those meetings, it was pretty evident that there was a lot of space out there, and there was only a skate park in the middle, and that skate park was, is the 9,500 square foot, and the net lot's about 41,000. So there was a lot of space for us to do the different elements. One of the biggest things was we don't want to take away what the skate park already has. We want then to enhance it. So this skate park here is designated to be 15,500 the square foot. So we wanted to make it, it's a very popular activity out there, so we wanted to make it bigger, better, and since it's been there over the 21 years now, there's a lot of the new elements to the skate park. One of the big elements was this wall here. They liked the Beatty Park wall, so being a wind wall, again, designed it for skate park. And then we'd have a playground here, a gazebo area here, the two half-court basketballs, and a restroom here. One element that we did add would be there would be lights for the skate park. So we would extend activity to the night, which is get you points in the application for extending opportunities for the public to have recreational opportunities. And that's the new part of within the skate park. Possibilities is still to come to change depending on our next meeting. And the JM Park, with this, we really can't change what we proposed from our last meeting, but we're just enhancing the conceptual, the design, being able to get more of a realistic, the cost estimate from the RHA. So we would the revamp the concession stand and bathrooms, add one other the basketball court, enhance the playground area. There'd be a fitness area, and this would be a gazebo, kind of like the Thompson Park. Then we'd be able to just to rent that out. And again, if we decide later that we want the gazebo on this side or this side, we can flip that around also. One element that we did add, because we wanted to make the park for the entire the community, will be a walking path that'll go all the way around. And so hopefully then we'll be engaging the community around there from morning until night. The JM Park, same kind of the concept. We already have our new bathroom in here, but we would enhance that. The playground area, again, adding a fitness element, and again a rentable the gazebo area for the community. We would also be the same as the JM, just the gutting the entire park, the brand new sod, dirt, irrigation, the gopher wire, brand new the concession stand and bathrooms, and then here uniquely kind of doing more of a wraparound stadium, the type of seating, and also kind of enhancing this area here with a taller net so we can address some of the concerns of our neighbors here. We're also going to add a lighting system here to enhance the playability again for the youth organizations or the community then to come in and rent the facility. And that concludes then the report. If you have any questions.
So the Beatty Park project and the potential wind wall, do we know how easy it will be to clean if it unfortunately is tagged or has graffiti? Has that been considered?
Yeah, there's different products that we're going to look at the putting on, but it's metal, so you would be able to just to power wash it too.
Okay. And then the second is, will we be able to locate a security camera there for potential overnight issues, and that just to protect the park and prevent vandalism and document? Is there plans to do that?
There wasn't plans in this project. If there's extra the contingency money, is something that we can talk about with staff, or if there's another funding opportunity for security cameras.
And we can get with our broadband group and do like we've done with other cameras.
It's just an unfortunate side of current that I'd like to protect it as much as possible and deterrent of hopefully it having happened. And then for the College Park final meeting on January 14th at 6 p.m., is that Zoom link on the homepage for the city? Is that easy to find?
Yes, it will be probably by the end of the week or at the first of the week,
Okay.
and we will put it out on our Facebooks for the city and the Lompoc, the rec division.
Okay, and then don't you also have an email that goes out from the pool publication?
Yeah, we will put it out on our poolside publication, our active, that'll blast out to everybody that's part of our system.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Mr. Guerrero? Seeing none, thank you. It looks awesome. Appreciate the update.
Oh, thank you.
Our next presentation is from our Management Service Director, Dean Albro, to provide a brief presentation on our Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or the CAFR, the Financial Systems Update, and the upcoming 2021-23 biennial budget. Oh, here comes the homework.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Mario. I'm looking forward to seeing those projects getting finished. That's awesome. I can't beat that. Today I'm going to do a little update on the finance stuff. Do a little bit about the munis migration. Somebody requested that I do an update. Then we'll go over that big book I just handed to you, the CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And then I'll talk about the outcome of that for the general fund. I'm not going to go over too much of the, well, I'll get into some details here. Let me get started on the munis stuff. So we started the munis migration in 2016. Did a lot of work on the GL. During that process, we implemented in October 1st, 2017. The GL and the purchasing also came with accounts payable, so that was a big backbone right there. We finished up with human resources and payroll for the expenditure side of the equation. And then we just got stuck. We really did. I mean, you see how many years it's been since we started. You see where we are for the utility billing implementation that we've tried once already and didn't quite work out. We didn't have all our ducks in a row. I think our system here is a little bit more complicated than Munis thought. So we scheduled it for March, and COVID knocked that one off. So we tried again for October, and that didn't work. We pretty much got pushed to the bottom due to the COVID. And it makes it really difficult because all the revenues are going through our POS system, then they go through the Alpha system. We have to reconcile it in that process, and then we have to reconcile it again when it has to go into the Munis system. So we got half in the new system and half not. And for the number of years we've been working that way. It's getting to be very tough and time consuming. But we're hoping that February we'll get that paralleled and start doing our billing in March. So I'm really excited about getting that last phase implemented. The modules 4 and 5 is our work orders, and then the community development permitting stuff. So that's it in a nutshell for the Munis migration. Like I said, I'm really excited about the utility billing getting converted. All right, so what's that big book I just handed you? Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And I got a little something that all you guys, this is a big secret right here. If you look right here in the bushes, there's COVID germs. Who said accountants don't have humor, huh?
Dad jokes.
Dad joke. It is. Look at it. Look really closely in your book. It's little COVID germs. You can look at that later. So real quick, I thought I'd just go through really briefly touch on all the sections that are in this book. It starts off with the introduction section. We have the letter of transmittal. It's just that. It's just saying what we're presenting. We talk a little bit, me and the boss, about, this is a comprehensive financial report for the period ending June 30, 2020. And it's Lompoc. And I talk about a profile in this section, and we talk a little bit about uniqueness about Lompoc to other cities. And then we have our org chart in the introduction. Remember our departments and divisions. And I'm pretty excited that we got, again, our 2019 got accepted for the Achievement Award for Financial Excellence. A lot of work goes into that, and I like to especially thank Christy Donnelly for putting in a lot of effort to make sure this happens. This is our staffing here for our executive management. And these are terrible pictures, but there you guys are. You're in the book too. Actually, in the book, it comes out really good. It's just not showing up very good on that screen. I'm sorry about that. You guys are all better looking in person. So once we kick off and get into the financial section, on page 21, it starts off with the audit letter. And this year we got an unmodified clean opinion, which means we did good. We're following generally accepted accounting principles, and they accepted it. If we move on, the management discussion, that's where if you want to get a lot of details. I do a comparative from last year to this year. I talk a lot about revenue streams and how they've changed, the challenges we have, and it's just, I get into a real detailed discussion. We take out all the prior period adjustments, so we're just talking about two years side by side. And you can read through that if you like. That's where you can find that kind of information. On page 42, we start the basic financials. And there's where you'll find the actual financial statements. In that section, you'll have all the major funds, the general fund and governmental funds, water, electric, wastewater, and solid waste. They all go one after another. And they'll all comprise kind of the same way. The first one's a balance sheet. Balance sheet's a point in time. That's saying where our assets are and our liabilities are. And the net position, if you go to that page 44, if you want to see an example, I like to point this one out, is our pension debt. You go to the liability section, you'll see it's about 91 million, if I'm not mistaken. And then the statement of activity, which is another income statement, and all the statements are the same way. They'll have a balance sheet and an income statement. The income statement ties to the balance sheet, but it goes over revenues and expenditures. So all the funds go through that same derivative. If you move to, and I can't see it very well, I think it's 70, you'll see all the notes, and that's in the financial section as well. These are where we drill down on things that are in the financials. For example, if you wanted to go to page 95, I believe that is, 96, you can look at pensions or retiree health, 106 there. And so there's a few pages on pension. You can dig in, get a drill down on those areas on the notes. The next section is the required supplemental information, and that's where you'll see, I think, one of the most important outcomes, and I'm going to go over it in a second here. That's page 128, the budget comparative for the general fund. And you'll also be able to see, as you go through the RSI, the non-major funds for the utilities, non-major fund for the governmentals or special revenue funds, and then also the internal service funds. That's what pretty much makes up the whole city. There's about 80 funds, so we have like 80 little businesses that we have to close. And the last section is the stats section. And I really encourage you as a council to go through. That's where you can see, what your city's comprised of, where are your sales coming from, where are your assessed valuations coming from, how much people make here, how many people have bachelor degrees. It's just a good section to go through to get a feel. If you go to another CAFR, you can always compare and see how we compare to other cities. So yeah, I think that's a really good information. All right, that's it for the CAFR. You guys enjoy.
Dean?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but just for the benefit of the public, that CAFR is posted on the city's website, right? On the finance
Sure is.
department website.
You can go to management services and you go to the finance section. It's already been posted. Yeah, you can. Sorry. Oh, okay, yeah. We'll connect it to the agenda so you can click on it and go to it. So.
And if I can jump in real quick, Mayor, I want to give, Dean gave a shout out to Christine. I want to give a shout out to the whole department. So my whole time in finance and doing CAFRs, I was never able to hit the December 18th date. You have up until the 31st, but you're just literally taking every day you can. They actually finished, it was the 18th, wasn't it, this year?
Yeah, we tried to do a few different things to try and get ahead. I know last year it was December 30th because we had a prior period adjustment. And that's what I did all Christmas.
And we even had one staff member, she was holding off on delivering her baby just to get this done. So,
yeah.
So we made it.
Yeah, that was the Glenn Burdette team. That's the audit team. They are very thorough. And they do a great job. This will be the last year that we can use our principal. Every 5 years you have to rotate and get a new principal. So you guys will be an RFP pretty soon for that. All right, well, I'm going to do just a real quick budget comparative to the actuals that happened for 2020 in the general fund. If you look at the budget book, you'll see their year one, which is the year I'm talking about, 2019-20, and you can see that we started with a $315,000 budgetary deficit. So that's where we started off. So what actually happened? You see in the first column, I always like to compare the original budget to what actually happened. What changed during the process? and how'd we do? So if you look at the top line, there's the revenues. We predict that we would have 37 million. We ended up being about 34. We missed it by 2.7. And the expenditures the same, 37, 35. We missed it by 1.3 almost. I always like to take out the one-time anomalies, capital improvements, things that aren't ongoing. So when you do that, you can see where we ended up with a operating variance of 1.3 million pretty much, but overall we were at 1.75, the top number there. And that's pretty much what we predicted in April. It's kind of what we thought would happen. And I'll go through those numbers right now. If you look at our revenue variances, we missed our sales tax number by 102,000, and that's really good because we were actually about 300,000 or 400,000 down in December at the mid-year. So we actually made up ground during the COVID, which surprised me a little bit. I thought we'd be close, but I kind of wanted to show what that looks like year over year, the blue lines being the actual revenues, and the green line actually being the variance from year over year. And you can see how, for the sales tax, how we did. It wasn't really too bad, minus 2.5. Taking into consideration in 2019, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration changed their process, and they had a little jump where we get money a little faster. So really, it was about 200,000 more in 19. So really been almost flatlined the last 3 years, which is good considering the COVID stuff and everything we've been through. So I thought that was pretty good. Good positive trend if you look at those numbers too, the variance year over year. Came to property tax, there's about 8.5 million there. We pretty much know what our property tax is going to be. We know what we're going to be for 21, and that's because once they do it on an assessed valuation, if we look at some of the property tax, this is the 1% share, and you can see where those revenues are. You can see right here the 5.4. That's great. We saw some really good increase in our assessed values for the city of Lompoc. I put 21 in here because we'll probably see something pretty close to that number because, like I said, the county assessor's already done their evaluations. And we look at the VLF, it pretty much mirrors the same thing since it's indexed off of assessed values as well. Good numbers, though, for the property tax, I think. This one, not so good. TOT really got hit really hard. Of course, that's from the COVID, being about 1.1 million down. We look at that on the variance, you can see the volatility of the TOT market. You can see in 2012 they had a big dip, and you can see we're at 40% below year over year, which we saw almost half of what we anticipated, so that was not good. But we kind of made up for it in cannabis. We predicted about 450,000. We ended up being about 983,000, so a lot more than we expected. I definitely learned a lot of things about revenue stream estimating for cannabis. Other taxes, about 57 positive. Permits were down. That's really because of the COVID. Fines and penalties. There's a one-time anomaly that came from the county for about 90,000. That's why that thing had such a surplus there. And the revenues from other agencies, we got about 580,000 in total money from the COVID, about 340 or 540 from the CARES Act, and the rest was from helping us out with public safety with some revenue streams. So overall, it was really just a little bit lower than normal, but still, that's why it's a big spike because of the COVID money that we got. And you can see the impact of charge for services or rentals as we shut down the pool. A lot of the rentals got canceled, and we didn't spend as much money in that area as well, but you can see what it did to our revenue stream. Our interest earnings was a little bit higher than we expected. And the other revenues, that one's a little high because we got a lot of contributions to the library for some of our capital projects. The road fund revenue shortfall there, it looks really bad, but don't worry about it. It's offset by the expenditures. There used to be, the story behind it used to be that we get a lot of TDA money and it's still in the budget. We need to take it out. So that's going to be offset by a huge surplus in the expenditure side when I go through that. Expenditures, so general government, that's city admin, HR, finance, attorney's office, city clerk's office makes up that. That's mainly from held positions. Planning, they look like they're over, but that's because they had projects that they took on that weren't in the original budget for zoning updates and Burton Ranch, I believe. Building, that was because we came to you and got a 180 addition for professional services. We didn't end up using it all. That's why there's a deficit there off the original budget. Surplus to police, deficit in fire. That's because we had a overhire for BC. A little bit was due to the overtime. And then you can see the surplus for rec and parks, and that's really because we sent a lot of people home. We didn't spend a lot of the money we anticipated, and we also had a lot of vacancies in those areas. The next one is where we house our non-departmentals, where we house our salary savings. I'm hoping that number will come down as what we budget, but we did have a pretty big budgeted salary savings that we tried to do. That negative should be offset by all the other positives. Like I said, hopefully that will come down in the next budget cycle. And then the library, and you can see the next one, the engineering one, it's offset by the like I said, the revenue, so it's pretty much a net there. And then building and facilities had a little bit of a surplus, and that was due to held positions. And again, you can see all the one-time anomalies there, and then our miss there by 1.3 million. On my last slide here, I wish I had a different slide to finish with, but if you look at the white and the light green, that's how much money we have in the bank. So you can see how much we had in 2011, almost 6.5 of unassigned money that we could spend. The green being, has a purpose. And you can see where we are now at the end there in 2020. We're actually below the line, we're negative. So it's something we'll need to work on in our next budget cycle, trying to get that back up. We should be about 9.5 million instead of negative 200,000. So on that note, I feel like I'm ending on a If you had any questions, I'm here for anything.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. I guess one of the questions, we used to get the Munis update, and we haven't had that for quite a while. Are we on budget with this project?
Yeah, relatively, yeah.
Relatively.
Well, I mean, we are trying to buy a little extra. I mean, we are going to be we're on budget, but we're trying to buy extra days, mainly for the utility billing. We're having a little bit of a challenge. The system that we have is an array system, which means it kind of takes data and it links data and links data. So we have all these different data sets. The one that we're moving to is a single array. So it's very difficult every single time we have to do a pass. We have to compile and compile and compile, and it's using up a lot of time.
I mean, it was a couple $1 million we spent. We actually borrowed money to install this system, so haven't heard for a while. The other question I have, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, is, so we're going to the online billing, you say here. Is this going to be enabling for people to pay their bills online now?
Yeah, one of the exciting things about the UP conversion is that we'll be able to set up, the software will be able to break out 2 merchant accounts. And so what does that mean? So if we can break out all the utilities, there's an agreement that MasterCard and Visa have that they can pay on there, and they pretty much say, we'll charge you almost nothing if it's for utilities. So if we can isolate the two, we can say, if you're coming in to pay your utilities, there's be no charge. However, if you're coming in to pay a tax, we will have a charge because we can't mark up a tax to make up that charge. Right now, we're eating it, and we're eating it to the tune of $300,000+ a year. It's pretty big, so I'm excited about that. I think that's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Dean, for all your hard work. Thank the staff. I know you are 50% below, and that there's a lot of other projects that had to be put aside to get this done and get it done in a timely manner, but again, congratulations on getting the award one more time and for having no issues with this audit. That is impressive, and I personally really appreciate you and the staff for working this hard.
Thank you.
All right. We will now open the floor for oral communications. These are general communications regarding city matters. The number to call is 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201. Remember to mute your PC, radio, or TV.
Good evening, you're live in the Lompoc City Council meeting. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Thank you. My name is Allison Wells. I'm the Associate Director for the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the Santa Barbara County Human Trafficking Task Force to thank the Mayor and the Council for the proclamation that will be read later in the week in recognition of the Human Trafficking Awareness Month of January. It has been said that when you know better, you do better. And for the original members of the Santa Barbara County Human Trafficking Task Force and the many other community organizations to follow, this is a very true regarding human trafficking that includes sex, labor, trafficking, as well as PSEC, which is commercially sexually exploited children. The task force is a collaboration between county agencies, nonprofits, and faith-based organizations that have forged a path since 2013 to provide safe housing, counseling, resources, education, and prevention programs to the entire county. We continue to grow in our collaboration and strength by the support that our local cities and county government provides to us. While January is recognized as Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and the task force, along with its partners, has several events planned for the month, it is not the only time of year that we present education and prevention programs. Since 2017, over 100 trainings were conducted with over 2,700 participants, of which 503 were to our local law enforcement partners. Education regarding previous assumptions, automatic beliefs, and even verbiage in describing victims is the only way to truly learn how to understand and help these survivors. The task force also provided 128 outreach prevention programs across the county. Now, many people want to believe that this is not a problem that is brought into our county from Vegas or other parts of the 101. But the fact is, it is a local people who are buying and selling our local women and girls and even boys. Since 2017, of the 173 investigations, 51% of the traffickers were from Santa Barbara County, and 92% were our locals buying the sex. From these investigations, there were over 176 survivors, and 43% were from Santa Barbara County. Sadly, 31% were 17 and younger. Please remember that these survivors have law enforcement interactions. This does not count the multitude of victims that may have been identified by community agencies, schools, and families that have noticed several red flags in an individual's behavior and or people things around a possible victim and are seeking help for them and their family. The task force provides ongoing case management, emotional and moral support, criminal justice-based advocacy, financial assistance, and personal items such as food, clothing, and personal hygiene, of which donations are accepted. Next Tuesday is Blair Blue Day for trafficking awareness, and on the 12th of this month, the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center will do a live Facebook event for the Spanish-speaking community regarding awareness of human trafficking in our local area. For future dates and how to donate, I will forward a link to the city to hopefully post to their site, and additional information will be on our website and Facebook page as well for additional events and vigils that will be happening in this month. On behalf
we're
of
at time, I'm sorry.
Continue support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison, for calling in on that. And yes, I will provide a virtual reading of your proclamation for you to share on your social media later this week. It is very important that despite COVID, we pay attention to another important issue in human trafficking awareness in this unusual time. Again, the Floor is open for general oral communications, 3 minutes maximum. You may call in at 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201, and remember to mute your PC, radio, or television. Madam Clerk, did we have any written general oral communication?
No, ma'am.
Seeing no additional calls, we will close oral communications and move on to new business. Item number 3, consideration of City Council list of requested future agenda items and potential amendment, addition, or removal of items. And we will have it from our city manager, Mr. Troop.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to throw up some very basic slides here in just a second. So I'll go ahead and get started. So this agenda item is to discuss the current list of what are called council requests. And for those watching at home or listening at home, these are requests made by a council member and then confirmed by at least 2 other council members. The requests are for a future agenda item, and that's staff is to begin work on those and prepare the item for a future council meeting. So the list will grow and it will shrink over time. In fact, when I first arrived, the list was about 2 pages long and had some items on there that had been 1 year to 2 years old. It's now about half a page, and all but a few of the items are from just the most recent year, 2020. So it may not look like it, but staff had been really working forward to finish them off. In fact, different meetings, when we have the department head meetings, I did task them with completing as many as we had, but there was a point in time where we'd complete 3 at a meeting and 2 more would pop back on. So it was that stop and go, 1 step forward, 2 steps back sometimes. And then when COVID hit, some of the things really slowed down, but we're still making progress. We've had other departments, which I'll get into, you'll see in a second, they're down 50%, such as the finance department. They've lost a lot of staff, so it makes it harder to do different things. But I am bringing this back to council for the same reason that we review previous council goals. Council people change, views change, priorities change, ideas change, or even legal requirements such as some of these on here have changed that could impact the need for some of these items. So I thought it best to review them all. In fact, I was asking staff when was the last time we actually reviewed them at some point, just like we would review the goals, and I don't think it's ever come back at some point just to see if that's anything that needs to be looked at. So what I did is the last time we talked, and in this case too, so this is a top level discussion. So if we get into one, number 4 on section 1, and we really want to dig into it, we'll need to bring that back as a discussion item to really dig down. So it's really more of looking at what these are in total, seeing what they were set up to be, and then deciding whether to continue on or change them or delete them. So again, I have categorized them by department and division, so I'll go through them up on the slides. And I think it's best, instead of one long list, we just break it into little chunks. It makes it a little easier to discuss, and I can give some updates on where we are. I also have staff here for the different areas, planning, my area with the city attorney, finance, utilities, and also some council goals. And with that, once we're done going through them with a short little blurb on what each one is, we can discuss whether they're, to keep them on the list, modify them on the list, delete them from the list, however we want to go forward. And then at the very end, whatever is left, hopefully somehow prioritize them. If there's only 10 of them left, well, that's pretty easy. But otherwise, it'd be great to modify these into a priority system of some kind. So you can look in your staff report or up above, community development and planning. I lumped them together. And the big quick thing on here is that the planning department did lose half their staff at the budget. So that is one issue. The other issue, they do have at least 60, and I think Brian's here somewhere. He's in the back, so if I get a number wrong, correct me. But there's about 60 different development projects they're working on right now. And then they have about, 8 different council items. And then there are some, I found out it's 16 to 20 planning commission items that they've been given from the planning commission. So they're close to 100 different items with 2 people. So there's different issues too. If they're working on some development plan, the developers paid their money, they're doing everything. They can't just stop on that and go to something else. They have to work their way through because that's what the developer's expecting. So there's different timing constraints on that one. But as we go through, the first one, and these aren't in any order, we just put them down here. Discussion of sign ordinance, temporary signs. If you recall, this came up during the last election process to discuss the political signs, the size, location, etc. So one question would be, do we want to continue that now, or do we want to bring it up at a different time? Is it a priority still or not a priority? The zoning amendment for business parks. This was to talk about business parks, to have them down to 1 acre parcels. Right now, I believe it's a 2 acre parcel. Is that correct, Brian? Yep, shaking his head. On bringing something back to look at that. Discussion of the zoning amendment code for PCD. That was a recent one, focusing a lot on H Street for deliveries, distribution along H Street. Discussion of allowing cannabis events. That went along as part of the agreement was to have the PCD discussion and cannabis events, but that one is broken out at a later date. Discussion and timeline and costs of general plan revisions. That one wouldn't be too difficult to bring back, I believe. It's going to be very expensive, but I think everybody needs to see what that would be. And the informational report on 2-in-1 services, that was back in March of 2020 that was brought up by Councilmember Starbuck, but the group that does that has said, we're not going out during COVID, we'll wait till it's all done, so it's nothing we can really bring forward at this time. 2 of the long-term ones, council workshop to review the 2030 plan and the general plan amendment for the EDC wording deletion, are 2 longer ones because of the different workshops that need to be done to follow the proper guidelines on a general plan update. So those 2 are in there. I think they need to be done. And I think Christy was telling me that, and Brian, that that's going to have to be done at some point because of our housing update has to be also completed. So any questions? I can go into more detail, or I have my experts here too to answer anything.
Councilmember Vega.
Jim, the proposed future city agenda as items that we have here, our sheet that shows the individual council requests by names, is this what we're referencing here?
Oh, no, it's in our,
And I'm looking at the staff report, and I
Yeah.
see that. So, I'm looking at the agendized items here, and I'm just trying to clarify what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
okay?
so it's the white sheet in the report.
Yeah,
so
and
I
I
broke
have that
up.
one here, okay? I just want to make sure what we're doing,
Yeah.
because we have proposed
Yeah, there's the
council request, and then you have the other thing that's being categorized a little bit different.
Yeah, so the one in the front is more of our working copy, and that one, I had to pick a date and time because there are times where we keep adding to it or we finish an item. So this was a point in time, and I think we added 1 or 2 items to it the other meeting. So this was when this report was written. And I broke it down, instead of by council member, I thought it's best to go around by, the division department, so you can then see what's happening. With the planning department, they're down by half their staff. Same thing with the finance department, but it just seemed to break it into a little easier.
Yeah, I think, with this, the way it's done, and it's done by name, many of these things were done out of respect for another council member who wanted to bring something back. So you have something by name. I'm not sure that if they're not here, the discussion is going to be led in the direction that it was intended to be, because many times all we do is we vote out of respect to bring information back to the public. But normally when it comes back, the person that requested it is the first one that gets to bring back what their intention was on that request. So
Right.
you get it, what I'm saying? I think some of that is lost when someone's not here and the request is made by a certain person. So, anyway.
Yep.
Just the point that we need to reference, I think.
And I absolutely respect that comment, Councilmember Vega, but I think unfortunately, because it was a council request, in order to pull it, we sort of have to go back to the same process and agree amongst 3 of us to pull it. So it's still the same process in order to pull it away. And I think this process, while it doesn't allot it by who requested it, it does do a better job for me to show the level of work we're asking of a department and be able to get better clarity as to why some of this might be taking too long. At the same time, be able to say, for me, I looked at this list and said, okay, what work have we created that the department might not have enough people in it to get it done in a timely manner? Or is it something that's going to come back anyway and doesn't have to be a council request because it is part of routine to come back? And that could be a removal because staff's already going to agendize it. Or did it have a place and time, and because of COVID, the place and time is completely changed? And this is an opportunity, I think, for us to really dial in what we're working on and asking our staff to do so that it has the best impact on our ability to deliver services to the community. So I get what you're saying, and I think that you're right. Some of these don't necessarily have relevance right now, but I think it's just as important that we go through and have a slight decision between us of, yeah, go ahead and shelve that for now. Go ahead and pull that, or you know what, that's not our focus anymore. We would like to move on from that. So I think that's why restructuring it, I like the restructuring so that we can see what the impact on that department is and make a better decision and take the politics of why it might have been requested out. Does that make sense?
I understand that. I just think that there might have been an easier way of condensing the actual list and then restructuring and coming back, because I think it's really easy. Being that the person that requested it might not be here, might not be able to reference it, so to come back and do it so we can restructure our future requested items, I understand that, so I agree with that. I just think that it might have been an easier way of doing this because even though we had 3 votes, but the actual requester is not going to be here, so it's going to be, I get you. We're going to ask again if anybody wants to bring it back, but it would have been, I would have been able to make a simpler way of bringing this back and condensing this actual list, but thank you.
So let's try and tackle it this way. So let's look at this short-term list, and I'll give you my initial feedback on it, and you can agree or disagree. So a lot of this I look at and I see it's zoning ordinance update requests that we have made, and since that is a task that the planning department needs to take on and bring back as a whole, I would like to see us pull these all together and come back, say in 6 months, with a zoning ordinance update that's a combination of anything that's zoning ordinance that we've requested, if we all still feel they're vital. The one we could pull out is the PCD distribution, because that's gone to Planning Commission and will come back to us anyway when Planning Commission's done with it. But when you look at the signing ordinance and the business park and the PCD and allowing cannabis events, that's all a zoning ordinance update. And instead of having them as little piecemeal parts that come back to us, we could say, take these things, and when you bring back the zoning ordinance for update, include these items in it. And that would eliminate 4 individual things almost right away and create it under the umbrella of an update that presumably would come in about 6 months because of additional changes that might need to be made for individual projects or mandated changes as a result to changes to the general plan. Am I seeing a head nod of potentially that would be a better time frame of something like combining those so they aren't these separate items floating out there?
Mayor, members of the council, we certainly can do that. We were going to already bring back a series of zoning text amendments, which would include the signs. We were going to bring that back next month. We were poised and ready to do that. But if you wanted us to go back to the Planning Commission and add some of these items, we certainly could do that as well. It's really at your discretion. But we were going to bring back those zoning text amendments that were initiated by the Planning Commission. Those were going to be ready to bring to you next month, but if you want us to pull back.
Just for the signing ordinance, though?
No, it was actually Planning Commission initiated amendments. And then the city council, about 2 months ago, during the election, mentioned they wanted some tweaks to temporary signs. So that's one of the ones on this list.
Right.
So we went ahead and added that into that as well. And then it stalled a little bit because of a development project that may have needed to add some amendments potentially, but we took that out. So we'll go in whatever direction, Mayor and Council, that you would like to do, but I just wanted to preface it by saying we were ready to bring back some of these next month.
So my question to you is, on this short-term list, which one of them are you ready to bring back next month? Because that means we can scratch them off the list because you're bringing them back.
Yes, that would be the first one.
Just the first one, okay. So the first one, you're ready to bring back. The zoning amendment on the business park hasn't been addressed yet and isn't ready to come back.
I think the question I would have for the next three is it still the intent of council to make those changes? Because that was something that, like Councilmember Vega stated, it may be something that the majority of council may not feel needs to be changed now. So for those two questions, I guess for me would have been the business park and PCD distribution questions. To bring them back in 6 months and work on those changes when there's not a majority interest in seeing that occur, that would be my question on those two.
So on number 3, we did have an affirmation at the last council meeting of December where 3 of us agreed to have that zoning amendment looked at and go to Planning Commission. That was part of a consent calendar correction, and 3 of us did agree to that from the current council. So that is to go to Planning Commission, and as a result would naturally come back to us, I believe. So that would be another potential pull because it's already in process, and it would be up to you to bring it back when it was ready. The cannabis event one, number 4, that was one I had requested, and for me, I think the bigger issue is including cannabis events, but to have a complete overview of the cannabis ordinance. So rather than make a new request right now, I'm willing to pull the discussion of cannabis events in order to make a new request at the end of this adjustment that says bring back the cannabis ordinance for a complete review, because it's been now almost 3 years and it's probably time to review that. So I'd be willing to make that concession because it was something I negotiated regarding the PCD as was splitting it. So if there's 2 in agreement with me to pull that, I'm willing to pull it, and I will make another council request after we're done regarding the other. So that takes care of 3 of those. Now, the zoning amendment for the business park is something that was requested by a council member that is no longer on, and so that would just need an affirmation by 3 of us if that is something we wanted to continue in the direction for. I will stop talking and give the floor to Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I'm going to make a comment here. We ought to just leave this alone because we don't have a planning commission currently. So it's going to be several months until we probably get one seated. How many people do we have on the planning commission right now?
Yeah, we actually do have a planning commission.
What's that?
We do have a planning commission. We have 3 members. We would love to get 2 more so we could have 5.
Who's on the planning commission currently?
We have Commissioner Bridge and we
Bridge
have,
is not on there now.
well,
He is.
he is until this change occurs.
The change occurred.
At March, I believe, is the
All
date.
current members of the commission serve
Till March?
until we make the reappointments, yes.
So we got till March to do this. That's why I would just leave them on there.
Right, and, yeah, okay.
So any other feedback on the business park zoning amendment about pulling it or leaving it?
Is there any business requesting us look at that?
We don't have any applicants asking for these zoning code amendments, if that's what you're asking,
Yeah.
Councilmember
So
Hall.
if a business was driving this request, I think it'd be something for us to listen to, but it's not, so I'd suggest pulling it.
Do I have a third to pull that? Councilmember Cordova.
Can you just recap for me what was the purpose of having this one, if anybody remembers?
Yes, I can give a quick understanding of it based on some discussions I had with previous Councilmember Mosby and Councilmember Vega. Is my understanding is there has been applicants, but they haven't come to the planning division yet, that are interested in doing projects on smaller sites in the business park area. I haven't talked to any specific applicants, and they haven't come, to us as far as to have a discussion or a meeting. Those projects might require smaller sites than what the minimum parcel size is in the business park. So that's all the information that I have at this time.
Councilmember Vega.
Yeah, that isn't true. That is true. Councilmember Ball, for all of our interests, there have been people that have inquired on the possibility of doing a build out on some of this vacant land here in town. And sometimes the buffer zones are, that prevent them from doing it are spread out into the land. And the only other option, after having discussion with the planning manager, Brian Halverson, they said there are some options, but they would have to be smaller lot sizes, and there's ways of utilizing the land without saying that 30 acres can't be used because the buffer zone touches it. So there have been some requests and some inquiries, and after having discussion with the planning manager and finding ways to make the land a little bit more usable to more people. So that's basically where this came from. So again, there'd be like, for instance, there's a lot over there across the street from the Lompoc Elks Lodge. It's a vacant lot right across the street, and because JM Park's on the other side, it kind of is a curve, that kind of goes into the land, but then there's a portion of it that could be used for, it could be wine, it could be warehousing, it could be something, but it'd have to be changed with a little bit of creative zoning amendments, I believe. Is that right, Brian?
Yes, that particular scenario where someone wanted to build on a parcel that's less than the minimum parcel size would require a general plan amendment. So, in short, that was kind of the requests that I heard or discussions that I had with council members.
I believe you may have misspoke. Did you mean general plan amendment or did you mean zoning amendment?
Well, they both have to be consistent.
So what we're asking for right now is whether or not we would make a zoning amendment that would then ultimately impact the general plan. And you're saying that unless a business comes and asks for it, then we don't affect either the general plan or the zoning ordinance. But if it were to be asked for, because it's out of compliance, we would have to make a general plan update as well, which would have a double impact. Right,
and generally speaking, that's something that is the applicant would request if someone actually had a project. So, ideally, it would be suitable to have the applicant approach us, and if they wanted to go that route, unless we believed, the council, I believed, that based on research that this particular development standard is not something that you want, and may want to look at other cities and counties to see if we're kind of in line with them. So that is something that if you want us to look at, we certainly could do that.
So again, to council, do you want to leave this on and, or pull it? Councilmember Cordova.
So, so the council request was to get a report or get the information from, or was it to make changes?
To make a change.
Okay, so my concern would be, I have a dual concern here, because my concern would be that we say, okay, well, there are no real requests. Some council members are saying that people have gone to them, but nobody's really come to City Hall. However, us waiting for somebody to come to City Hall doesn't really give a whole lot of forward thinking with thinking outside of the box as to how we can expand and grow businesses in our community. With that being said, I think when you consider something that then triggers the general plan update or something else, and it's all hypothetical because we're also looking at every consideration would be a different scenario based on the lot size, the land, the parcel, the business, and so this blows my mind. It could literally take us in a million other directions. So I don't think that we would be ready for a zoning amendment, being that we don't really have clear direction because there's no businesses that are requesting this from us right now. However, I do think that, we should have some forward thinking as to whether this, and like what Brian just said, considering what are other cities doing. So I would be more in favor of just looking at it from that angle, but not supporting any changes that would then trigger general plan updates that would then lead us down a rabbit hole when there's no businesses knocking on their doors waiting for them to get in and make this request. So based on this conversation, I would then support taking it off of the list.
Thank you for that. All right, so that's 3 to take that off the list. What was that?
I'm sorry, did we get 3 votes to remove all of the ones that you suggested?
No, that would be item 2. We were wiggling around on item 2 right now. So Councilmember Ball suggested pulling it. I supported that, and Councilmember Cordova just provided the third on that one. Number 1 was the signing ordinance. That is coming back already from a planning commission update. So technically that one can be pulled because it's already coming back as part of a planning commission update.
So will that be pulled, or will it be put on the future agenda list, not as a council request, but as an item that is coming in the future?
Well, it's coming as part of a larger package, my understanding, from the planning commission, so it's no longer needing to be a council request.
That's correct. That is correct, Mayor, and the planning division will be requesting that for a meeting next month, so I'll work with the clerk and the department heads.
And then item 3 is coming back to us as a result of already affirming it at the end of December and going to the Planning Commission for review, and will ultimately come back to us. So leaving it on the list is maybe a trigger for staff to remember to bring it back. But again, I'm looking to you is it going to come back as a bigger package?
On the sign ordinance, I'm sorry.
No, the PCD distribution, number 3.
Yes, it would be part of a larger package, depending, again, on what direction council gives. And I think where I would like a little extra clarification on these is zoning code amendments, general plan amendments. All of those are going to take an investment of money that we don't have. Dean can kind of let you guys know where we sit right now from our last zoning amendment. So right now, we can't make any effort on any of these. So when considering these, I think that's an important piece to know. That's why it is a 2030 general plan, because there really isn't an intention to update that more than 15, 20 years. So just want to put that out there, that if there is something on here, we could come back quickly with something that says, here's what it would cost and here's what the process would look like. That's pretty much what we were trying to do with the timeline and cost for general plan revisions, to try and lump some of that general plan amendment stuff together and come back with, this is what it looks like, this is what it takes to make these things happen, but this is what it costs. So you guys are going to have to appropriate some funds and borrow some money from somewhere because we don't have it. So I guess some of this stuff I'm looking at, like, we could lump it together, especially that general plan stuff, and come back with something for you quickly and have a presentation on the process, and council as a whole can decide, do we want to tackle this right now or do we want to put it out? So I'll just throw that out there as another option for both the zoning code stuff and the general plan stuff.
Well, great minds think alike. I was trying to get through the zoning ordinance stuff first and then pivot to talk about general plan, which is the next set of information. So my question was on item 3, which is the PCD distribution that we affirmed at the last meeting and is going to the Planning Commission. Will that come back as its own item or as part of a larger group? And if it does, should we leave it on the list?
I think we could leave it on the list. It's one of those things, though, that's going to be a little bit out there because
Sure.
it has to go to Planning Commission and all of that. So.
Exactly. No, that was the intent, was
Sure.
that it would take time going to Planning Commission. The question is, ultimately, it will come back to council. So the question becomes, does it remain a council request, given we've given direction and it will automatically come back to us? So leaving it hanging there as a council request for a year, if it takes that much process for the Planning Commission, is that the appropriate use of the council request? And so that's why I
following
was
you.
asking for, given we've already made a decision, we've already given direction, and it's moving forward through the process, leaving it as a council request seems moot at this point because it will ultimately come back to us once Planning Commission has finished their evaluation and recommendation.
I'm following you. Yeah, I think it's okay to remove it, given that we know we're taking it to Planning Commission and it's going to automatically kick back to you anyway.
Okay, that was the clarity I was going for on that one. So, my general gist of this, which is making it far more convoluted than I had intended, was to lump things together where we could to simplify it for staff to come back either with a report that informs us how much more complicated it is and how expensive it might be to get it done, versus it's been done, versus, hey, here's a memo, or versus we no longer have a desire to push something like this forward. That's the focus I'm trying to keep on the conversation, rather than wandering into the details of each one of these, because the details of each one of these is exactly why they were requested. So my apologies for feeling like it's not going that direction, but the first 4 things were all sort of under a zoning ordinance issue. So for clarity, to my city clerk, who is nodding her head.
No, so the only vote that you have taken is to remove number 2.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to lump them into a single vote as much as possible so that, but I can go back to line item 1.
No, I don't mind you lumping them in. I just want to make sure that we get a vote on all of them.
Yeah.
If they're together, that's great, but I need to know who actually is requesting the vote, who is seconded, and who is then given you your carry.
No problem on that one. Okay. Councilmember Starbuck.
Mr. Ball was first.
All right, Mr. Ball.
I just had a suggestion, and maybe it can help just, we could spend all day kind of going through the details, and we're not really getting into the details of some of these topics. As we all know, we're right in the middle of the start of 2021. This is COVID Recovery 101. We're scrambling to try to figure everything out. So would it make sense to go through this list all together and say, if we know item 1 or 7 or 5 is going to come back in some form, does it need to be on this list? We can cancel those out. I mean, can we take a chunk of these out because we already know it's already coming back?
Right, but we still need to take that vote on that. So item number 1 is a discussion of sign ordinance. It's a temporary sign ordinance that will be coming back already from Planning Commission. I would make the suggestion we move it from the list and would just need 2 to support me on that.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, when you say remove it from the list, you mean from your city council request list?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, but it is on the future agenda items list. So you're not talking about removing it from the future agenda items list.
But this particular item is becoming a part of a larger Planning Commission report according to staff. So it's not even technically a future agenda item list item because it's no longer a single line item coming back. It's part of a larger Planning Commission report request to council. And that's where that one gets complicated, which is why I was asking for clarification from staff, is they're lumping the sign ordinance into another list of additional Planning Commission recommendations. and bringing it all back. So it's a future agenda item, but it's not a single item on the list anymore.
That means a new council agenda item is going to replace that one, essentially.
No, not a new council item. It's a staff report now that will be coming back, and this will be included as part of that. But it's a broader list of topics.
But regardless of the source, it is on a future agenda.
Yes.
Right,
So it
it'll be included, so it won't have a standalone report, it would be included in a bigger report to cover that item.
Based on staff's feedback.
Okay.
All right. Councilmember Starbuck.
Is that the same with item 2, Business Park?
Well, that
Or is
one,
that going to delete now?
that one we took a vote to delete.
Okay, well, this is the one thing about it. Now, nobody, when they go online looking for a small piece of business park property, will look at Lompoc now. Ours are 2 acres or whatever.
I think if we communicate that we're willing to work with you on a parcel, rather than saying that we're set in hard stone, that's something we need to learn to communicate, and that's a different issue, rather than creating a bunch of exceptions. So item 1 was move to remove because it's part of a future agenda, larger item, so it's no longer a council request. I made the suggestion. I heard a second from Councilmember Ball. Councilmember Cordova?
I was just going to say that I don't know how comfortable I am with removing things from the list, because I'd have to trust that the items are going to come back and that they're going to come back in a timely manner, and that hasn't historically been the case. So if we remove it from here, it's liable to get lost. I know that Brian said and Christie said that this item number 1, for example, is already coming back next month. So why do we need to remove it? Just leave it on there. It's coming back next month, you know. My concern would be, again, other things that aren't being addressed yet next month, that we remove them because we're being told that they're going to come back eventually in a staff report. But then if it never happens, we forget about it and then it never happens. So that would be my concern with that.
So we don't have 3 on that one, and it will remain on the list.
Okay.
The zoning amendment will come back as an item because we affirmed it for PCD for number 3. Number 4, I am willing to pull because I will make a different request that will include it. So if I have support on that to pull it, I just need 2. Councilmember Cordova?
I would support that because you're also bringing back the additional discussion, which I think is great.
Okay,
I'll give you third.
thank you. So that is 3 for pulling the cannabis event requests. All right, I'm going to skip number 5 for the moment and go back to the report on the 211 services. I absolutely agree that we need it. You're right that who's doing it's not doing it right now. And it's important that we figure out a way to get that information. So rather than pull it, what I would suggest is maybe the group that does it could do a video that could be shown. Maybe reach out to them. Is there another format where they could do the information and we are able to share it at a council meeting and then also reshare it via our website and other options? I think that the important thing that Councilmember Starbuck was trying to do was connect the community with the resources
Right.
they might need during COVID.
No, and we've been trying, I don't know, Christie, you talked to them last. Do you have any update or whatever the last one?
I haven't gotten a response on my last request. The agency that is handling 211, they've kind of been bombarded with the COVID relief funding and the rollout of the rental assistance that's been through for the whole county.
Yeah.
So with limited staffing and obviously everything that's going on, at first it was they didn't want to be in person, and then there's one person trying to get that one person to do a Zoom meeting with us, given that they were inundated with all of this other stuff. It's been really challenging for them. The one thing I can offer, it's not a very difficult thing to explain to people. I can do a presentation or have the community development program manager give you guys a presentation on 211. Everything's on their website. They have a little video on YouTube. I mean, If we're just trying to get information to the community, I was a little concerned that the request was more engagement and questions on who funds 211, how do we get more information on 211, more questions to the management of the 211 system, which we don't have the behind the scenes on that.
So with Councilmember Starbuck here, who made the request, let's get some clarification from him.
I'm going to make it real simple. The Human Services Commission used to update the little pamphlet book. There was a few of them kicking around over there on your side of the building here. I found a couple of them. They just needed update. They were little handouts that were given to support groups in the city. Then there was the actual 211 dial number system that a lot of people weren't aware of. Wasn't making a big deal out of it. I just trying to make it informational. And how many people really watch this right now?
What if we do like Christy said, and she or Chanel can be a pseudo 211 person and bring forth that information? That would be good. And number 5, I think absolutely should be on there. I think we need to.
Oh, I'm going back to
Oh, okay.
I was, again, trying to gather things that are of a similar nature in order to make it easier. So I think that we've gotten clarity for staff regarding item 6, and that it's really key to getting that information out. If that YouTube video is available, it might be easy to show at the council meeting and then link later and that sort of thing. So anything where we can get that information pushed forward, absolutely. So that stays on the agenda and council requests. All right, 5, 1, and 2 of the long term are all general plan related, and I think that the discussion and timeline and costs of the plan revision absolutely needs to come to us in a 30,000-foot level. Explain to us the cost, the process, and lumping in items 1 and 2 of the long term under it help us better understand what that impact is on asking staff to do these kinds of updates. And having a new council member is the education you need, a refresher for us and new knowledge. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have it come forward, but I like your suggestion of explaining all that to us so that those long-term requests that we've made, we can better understand what those financial impacts are. Any other feedback on that from council? Councilmember Vega.
Mayor, is there a simpler way of explaining what we're doing here to the public? I think this is very confusing, and I think it's way too deep. Just to clarify and revamp our council request, and I understand we're trying to change the whole structure and put staff first and put the council request after that. I just want the public to be immersed in this and understand. Otherwise, they're going to turn off the TV and go home because it's really confusing. And I think if we're confused, they're going to be confused on what we're trying to do here.
So the next option, once we finish this grouping, is we can just literally go to the next list and we'll go through and I'll ask you, do you want to keep this item or not keep this item? That I can do as well.
I think that would be a little bit easier for people to see what we're trying to do, and I think maybe it might be a little easier for us to grasp. And with all due respect, I just think it's a little deep.
Councilmember Ball.
I agree with part of that. I just want to say that I think part of this is the process for me, obviously, to catch up, and for those that are watching out there and paying attention, is we really need to understand where our priorities are and how much some of this stuff is going to cost, and how has the uncertainty of this past year affected these goals. But going back to the cost side of things, there's a lot of whimsical, requests and some things to talk about in the past, but all of those things come with a cost. What we're trying to do by cleaning up this list a little bit is hopefully remove a little bit of the paralysis that seems to happen when we have half the staff that we used to have, but we've doubled their list of work items. So anything we can do to condense, clean this up, clarify, and make it simple. The devil is in the details, so we do have to kind of get into this a little bit. But for those watching out there, we need to clean this list up so that we can get staff activated and excited to work on some of this stuff and get it done quickly.
Council, if I may just make a very quick comment. I had done a presentation last year. I want to say it was about maybe 6 months ago and outlined exactly what those changes were. And then Christy and I, we talked to a consultant. We got some information, and we can certainly bring that back to you, but it is costly. And so, as Christy described earlier, we don't have the funding allocated right now, but we can certainly come back, do the presentation, provide more information about the revisions, because I know Mr. Ball was not here at that time. And I could forward that presentation to you as well. So I just wanted to, because Mr. Vega mentioned that it might be a little confusing. That was a PowerPoint presentation that I did, just kind of described some of the things that the ad hoc committee was interested in changing, but it was significant enough that there would be a cost associated with that, and not a small cost, a pretty large cost. So I just wanted to add that clarity to that item.
So I know you made the presentation. What we failed to do was have a discussion based on that timeline and costs about how to move forward. And part of it was the fact that we didn't have the funds at the time. So I think it's important to leave discussion on here because of that. And unfortunately, it will need to be another presentation of it. And given we're about to go into budget discussions, it probably will be a part of that. So I don't see a reason to pull that. It's just figuring out the best time to bring that back because, again, you're right. You did do a presentation about 6 months ago, and things have gotten financially worse for us. So it's even more important to have that discussion, but we'll need to have it again. So I think leaving that on the agenda is important, and the two long-term things are connected to that because they're amendments to that document that are part of that cost. So those, I don't believe those should be pulled. We just need some clarity about when the best time is to bring that back based on impact and budget. I believe that takes care of the first section.
Can I go through and maybe suggest the ones I think that we either, they're moot, they're, legally or just time-wise something happened, if I can go through those maybe? And that should get rid of a few of them that you go, okay, yeah, we can't touch those anymore. Under the next section, which is mine and a little bit of the city attorney, not too many in there. The review of the fireworks ordinance, that's actually, Jeff said he can bring that back for the next council item. Discussion of the animal shelter, that's going to come back the next council agenda item. Other ones, just because they're on here doesn't mean we're not doing anything, such as like number 6, continuing discussion of the syringe exchange program. That one we've started on, but we're in a holding pattern again. So sometimes these look like we're not doing anything, but we're just sitting here in a holding pattern waiting. So this case, Jeff and I had talked with the county public health. We figured out what we can and can't do. We moved on to another area to look at, but City of Santa Ana put forth a resolution to ban them in their city. And we're like, ooh, well, let's see what they did. So now we're waiting to see what happened with that resolution. Is there anyone challenging that resolution? Because we didn't want to come forth and do the same thing and then have a legal challenge come back later. So we're waiting, at this point, sort of a waiting game to see how that plays out. So those 4 and 5 are coming back. The others, they're up for discussion. We can work on those, but some easy ones I can go through. Finance, number 1, AB 1600 capital improvement projects. This absolutely comes back in the budget. So to do it now and then to do it a month or so later, that would be one I would recommend not having to do. The discussion of the housing assistance program. We did a big presentation on it. Christy was the one that did it. We were looking at maybe using CDBG funds, but those are for low-income people. Our police officers don't fit that qualification criteria. And we have no money in the general fund to help out. So this was said, bring it back and we'll talk about it again. But I can tell you right now, we have no money in our general fund. And the CDBG still isn't going to be there. So my recommendation would be, pull that for now until we're better in our general fund. Utilities, the discussion of wastewater ordinances, elements, LMC, the municipal code, administrative fines, et cetera. This is all being covered by the AOC. So it is a moot point. We have to do what the AOC says. So I would recommend we, remove that one. We can continue with the solid waste project that's coming back in just another month or two. Council down below, this is from the ad hoc committee on the enterprise reimbursement study. That study is actually gone. I mean, it's gone in the sense that we have to do a new study to meet the new legal requirements. So to review an old study that's no longer meeting the requirements would be not a good use of time. And then we'll be bringing back, actually tonight is the first part of the discussion of the council handbooks, and then the commission will come later with the ad hoc committee. So those are some easy ones to get to. And then the other ones we can go through and discuss, but at least that one pulls off a few if you all were in agreement with that.
Okay, so let's go back to administration, city attorney, and just run down the list. And as we get to the ones that you mentioned, we can very quickly take that into consideration. So administration, city attorney, item 1, discussion of possible nonprofit organization and structure. I made this request. I'd like to keep it. Is there anybody who would like to pull it? Seeing no one wish to pull it, it will remain on the list. Number 2, report on implementation of digital time clocks. This one, I think, is getting into micromanagement. I'd like to see this one pulled. I just need a second and a third in support of that. Councilmember Ball.
I'll second.
All right. Do I have a third? Councilmember Cordova.
Well, do we have digital time clocks?
Our current system has a time clock system on it, but what this was really to do is more of a punch clock. You know, some of them could do it on your cell phones. I can go into a lot of detail on this one, but it's,
No,
our current system does have a timekeeping
right,
system.
and how does that work? How do employees?
I'm gonna ask Dean.
Is it
to
like a
explain that.
badge? Is it like everybody swipes, or is it everybody just writes down their hours?
No, right now, the employee keys their stuff in, and it goes through a workflow, and it goes to the next supervisor, and he approves it, and then it goes to the timekeepers to pay them. So it's not like a punch card system, no.
It's all on the computer. They
It's all on the
punch in.
computer.
So in your consideration, though, is that considered an antiquated way of record keeping or timekeeping? Because I think if it is, then we should look and have a discussion
Like-
about how to evolve
That's
to a
actually
much more efficient and much more reliable.
Well, that's on our new system, so it's going from the old paper, fill out the paper, onto a computer system now,
It's part of the Munis system.
part of the Munis system.
Yeah.
So the new Munis system is the part where the employee sits at their desk, they clock in at their desk. So
Correct.
you know for a fact then that they're clocking in because they're at their desk.
Correct. Yeah. Isn't it? No? I guess something.
I'm sorry. What you're saying is that I get to my desk at 9 a.m., I clock onto my computer, and it knows I'm at work.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Is that
That's
what
not
it's
our
doing?
system does.
No, it's not. I looked at Dean. Dean,
No, probably, 35, 40% are exempt. They don't key in their time off unless they're going to use their leave banks. So if they were going to go on vacation, then they would say, I'd like to have this day off. And then it would go to their boss, and their boss could approve it, and then it would get processed.
But for the ones that are clocking in, they go to their desk, they sit down and they punch in?
They can, yeah. A lot of people do that, yeah.
Or,
Or they can accumulate their, they could key them all in at the end of the week, or they could key them in twice a week, every day. It's up to them. They're keying in their hours that they're working,
through the new Munis system?
yes.
in the new system.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, Mr. Ball.
Can you talk to us about the difference between, so we're talking about just clocking in, everyone thinks that sounds relatively reasonable. It's a little more complicated here. We have both salaried staff and hourly staff. Can you explain some of the complications of that?
Right. So when this was made, the discussion was to have everybody, exempt and non-exempt. So that becomes an issue from a labor attorney standpoint, because now you're asking an exempt person to clock in and clock out. It could get really dicey on that one, because the person who is supposed to work as many hours they need or whatever to just get the job done is now being requested to show their hours. So there could be issues with that.
Mayor and council, We're getting into actually having the agenda item right now. So the item tonight is supposed to be just whether you want to have this discussion or not. So if you want to have the discussion, then we'll leave it on the list for a future date.
Yeah.
So are you pulling your second, Mr. Mull?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, just wanted to make sure. So given there is not a third, we're going to leave it on the list? It is being left on the list. Evaluation of extending city hall hours. I think that I made this request. What I would like to see us have a discussion is as we go to reopen City Hall, how do we reinvent City Hall? So rather than it being strictly evaluation of extending City Hall hours, I would ask that you just include the discussion when you bring back how we're going to reopen City Hall and how we might reinvent that. So I'm willing to pull that item as a very specific agenda future item list, if I can get a second and a third on that.
Second.
Third.
Thank you. You said the fireworks is coming back relatively quickly, the animal shelter's coming back relatively quickly, and we're waiting for some additional syringe exchange program information. So those three should remain. And then the riverbed cleanup, we absolutely do need to have that discussion.
I have that about half written right now.
And I know that it's impacted both by our own budget as well as implications of county participation, but I can't see that being pulled. Under finance, you made the recommendation that we pull the AB 1600 because it comes back as part of the budget discussion, so I'm willing to support that. If I could get a second and third.
Second.
Councilmember Cordova.
Is this pertaining just to the park fees? So was the intent on this item to discuss park fees?
That was the intent, to discuss park fees, but when we come back, we'll have them for all the different fees, not just
If
park
I
fees.
could, this item's already been brought to council already. The budget was brought back to council. When we compile and put the capital improvement program together, you guys all have the authority to direct us to set appropriations for whatever you would like in the AB 1600. But you should know that this has already came back to council once.
But it will be there in the budget, delineated project by project by project. So you'll see the one for parks, streets, facilities, all the different AB 1600 fees are broken out.
And in that budget discussion, we are able to increase, decrease, remove.
Change, modify, amend, yep, anything you want to do.
Also keep in mind that in December, I brought all the AB 1600 report, December 15th, and you had all the projects that are in there, you had all the costs that are in there. This has already been given to council a few times, but if you would like to, I think the intent was to try and get a project forward. Tell me what project you like, we'll put it in the capital improvement book, and you guys can vote on it. It's up to you guys.
Well, I think if I recall correctly during the discussion before, it was that it was coming back, and so we would have that discussion. I don't think that we necessarily made the decisions during those to eliminate or remove or any of that during the last discussion. At least that's not what I remember. I don't have my notes in front of me, but I would be in favor. I would give the third if it's going to be discussed during the budget cycle, and it will be considered at that time.
It'll all be absolutely discussed in part of the budget cycle for any additions or subtractions, modifications.
All right, that one is pulled with a vote of 3. Discussion of cannabis license application deposits. I believe this was a request to return. I don't believe this is something that needs to be discussed or returned. I know that we're the only city that only takes a deposit from the first time. We don't have an annual renewal rate of any sort, and that there are ongoing costs that we are still covering regarding cannabis, and we fall short of it. So I would say that we need to remove discussion of cannabis license application deposits returned.
We did send out, how long ago? Sent out a little while ago, an update of what the different deposits were. That was one of the requests, so we did send that out as a memo. Can't remember how long ago it was. We can find that and update it and send that out to you if you're interested in that.
Councilmember Cordova.
Are these applications deposits part of the cannabis ordinance?
Yeah, so when they're coming in to do, I forgot, is it 13,000?
They're written into the ordinance?
Yeah. They're written into the application process.
I
So
believe it's
if we,
I believe it's written into a resolution. The deposit amount is written into a resolution, and it's $11,900 for the application. And then each individual financially interested person has a fee of $1,100.
so what my suggestion was going to be, if we remove it as an item from here, but then we add it to your potentially proposed request for the cannabis ordinance, and then we could pile it all in there and have the whole discussion.
Yes.
Okay, you got my second.
All right. Do I have a third on that one?
I'll give you a third.
All right. So item 2 is pulled. Item 3, review of solid waste rate increase. We have finished our cycle of 5-year rate increase, and we're about to potentially enter into another.
So we're actually, I've missed that one, I apologize. That one, we're actually in with a consultant right now doing it, so it can't go forward until it comes back to you. So having it on here, I mean, it's by definition, it has to come back to you for discussion.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Are we doing a 218 on all of our utilities or just solid waste?
Right now, we're just working, at the moment, we have to do study by study, so we're doing the solid waste, and that will be a 218 process. Once the study's done, then we'll begin that process. Right now, it's just calculating what is necessary.
If you don't mind me asking, what consultant's doing the utilities? Is it Winham again?
I have not yet worked with them here, but we can find that out.
So you're recommending the fact that this is going to come back
Well,
as part of.
It has to. It's a requirement to come back before the rates can be adopted. I mean, it has to go through the whole process, as Councilman Starbuck
Right,
said.
the Prop 218.
Prop
so it's
218 is a big piece, and then the public hearing, and then it's finally adopted, so.
So having it as a council request is
It's
doubling up on something that's standard.
It's going to be, that
It's
will
going to come back.
absolutely have to come back.
So the recommendation is to pull this council request. Councilmember Cordova.
Second.
I got a wave out of Starbucks, so we'll take that as a pull. Thank you for that.
And Dirk, I believe it's Wilson.
Item 4 is, we've had the presentation on the housing assistance program. I think, if anything, having a memo issued to Councilmember Ball for a reminder, and then pulling this, because we've had the discussion, and it's going to be quite a while before we have general fund monies to be able to do specialty programs of any sort. So I think it's leaving something out there that is unfortunately not healthy to have just sitting on a list. Councilmember Cordova.
Yeah, I agree. I had a problem with this one when it came before council, because it was a whole lot of talking and no action. So, I mean, if we can't fund it, then why are we even, considering something that we can't fund with this, because of the fact that the salaries automatically put them out of range from being able to partake with the CDBG funds, so.
Well, and then to do an extra program which requires general fund, and we don't have any general fund right now, and if we do, there are higher priorities other than a housing assistance program for public safety, unfortunately.
Give you a second on that.
So I got a second and a third? Okay, so that one we will pull. Utilities, you stated that I had made this request, and I'm happy to pull it because we are under the AOC and are now following all of that, and it includes that information in it, so I am okay with pulling it. Anybody?
Okay with that, too?
All right,
Third.
so Vega and Cordova gave me my third. I'm pulling that. Discussion of the solid waste pilot program regarding scavenging. I know it's begun and that you're most likely able to bring back a report soon, so.
Yeah, it was scheduled for March, so basically
Okay.
a little less than 2 months.
So leaving it there, would council be willing to consider a memo on that, or would you want a report coming back to council? Councilmember Cordova.
Well, I think the discussion was had, so I think an update is important, rather than a memo. But this is another one that I had a problem with. It was a request that I call the dog and pony show, because we're going to do a request to act like we're handling something, but in reality, we're not handling anything, because all we're going to do is give somebody a handout. So there's no teeth to it.
Yeah, we can do, I don't mind having, staff can do an update to it. That's not a hard thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with an update or even a memo, because Councilwoman Cordova is correct. There was no teeth in that one.
Right, but she would still like at least an update at council level rather than a memo.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
No.
fine.
But I just thought I'd throw it out there, given lack of teeth. Report from the ad hoc for enterprise reimbursement study. I had made this request. I'm willing to pull it back, given the new study is being done. If there's no one.
I'll give you a second.
Yep, so that, I got a head nod from Councilmember Vega and from Mr. Ball. Tonight, we're to begin discussion on the council handbook and the commission handbooks. If you are comfortable as a council allowing the ad hoc to incorporate that into the ad hoc so that it's not staff time, just legal review and city manager and city clerk, I'm happy to add that to the ad hoc on committees and commissions.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the ad hoc coming back with recommendations would be
Okay.
great.
Okay, I just need a third on that one.
I'll give you a third.
Okay. So we'll split those two out, and we'll put the commission handbook underneath the ad hoc for committees and commissions. I think we've hit it all.
Can I just, one last thing. Sorry for putting the bamboo under the fingernails. I truly appreciate you going through this. This has, been something at staff meetings time and time again. So I know it was very painful, but I do appreciate you taking the time to go through it. So thank
It
you.
was painful, Jim.
It was, I know. I owe you, I know.
I had a quick question just for clarity. And again, we're trying to condense and clean up this list a little bit. In the rare event that we do want to add something to this, is that something we do at the end of the meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
at this point, we go back to our tradition of adding council requests at the end of the meeting, because this was agendized just to clean up this list.
Perfect. I'm learning. Thank you.
No problem. Good question. Any other questions? Councilmember Cordova.
Yeah, I just want to say that our goal is obviously never to eliminate this list. That's what we're here for. So I think being more conscious about what we ask of staff and the reality of whether we're giving them a focused action item to really pursue is so much better than just talking about stuff and not getting anywhere. And then the consideration, I think one of the things that kept coming up during this discussion and throughout my past time on council is the consideration that we want so much from staff, but then the response is always, we don't have enough people. So when we sit and we consider cutbacks to the budget, we have to consider it's not just the savings that we think we're saving on by cutting that position, but the ramification or the impact of us creating inefficiencies and us creating potential, losses in services and not being able to move this city forward because we're not thinking about what we need in those departments to be properly staffed to handle city business. So I would hope that we can grow from this and we can consider that coming up in our budget season.
Thank you for putting it so well.
Can I second that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay, item number 4 is overview discussion of policies, procedures, and rules in the City Council Handbook, discussion of potential revisions or amendments to the handbook. It is a very big document, so I think we'll begin with no expectation that we necessarily are concluded by the end of the evening, but I think it's an important way to kick off our new council and council year, given the last time this was revised was 2017, December of 2017, and there's a lot of, I know, I heard you two though. I'm trying to make this painless. So what I think is important before we kick this off is to say, this isn't necessarily to finish tonight. I think we start the discussion and we take some guidance from our city attorney and then decide how to move forward next on updating it, because again, this document has some very outdated portions to it that really do need to be looked at. So I'll hand that over to you, Mr. Malave.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, for those introductory comments. I think you're correct that it is a very long document, so it would be a really long discussion tonight if we were to go through every single item that the council might want to tweak in this document. So I think tonight is just going to be a very broad overview of what the handbook is and the various chapters or sections of the handbook and kind of in general what it covers. And then I will leave it to the council to give direction from there. At the last meeting, you did request this item, and you said didn't really need a written staff report. So we just put the handbook in the packet, and I'm going to go over it quickly tonight. The City Council Handbook is a book that does have some California state law rules in it that we have to abide by whether we have a handbook or not. But one of the purposes of the handbook is to make additional rules that the council wants to abide by for itself that apply only here in Lompoc. And they govern the way that we have our meetings, the procedure during our meetings, the way that our agenda packets are prepared, council decorum, council member conduct, the conduct of the public when they speak at the council meetings. There are lots of different rules and guidelines in this book that the council has created over the last more than 30 years. Because if you notice at the beginning, this was first adopted in January 1987. And we're in 2021. The last time it was amended was December 2017.
And the last time it was revised was April 2010.
That's right. So I'm just going to go through the handbook and note some of the broad general rules that we have in here and topics. So very first thing on page 1 is a statement. This was adopted by resolution, but also that these rules that we have in here are not necessarily something that if we accidentally happen to not follow these rules, that someone could sue over and then get a council action overturned. Simply because, for instance, we didn't post the draft agenda for that meeting 2 Wednesdays before, or 2 Fridays before the meeting, which is one of the rules in here, that we have to post a draft agenda 2 Fridays before a council meeting. And if we had these be absolute certain law rules, if the staff happened to forget to post that draft agenda, then anything that happened at that council meeting could be sued on in court and invalidated because we didn't follow these rules. And we say that these are directory and not mandatory just to avoid situations like that. Part A, starting on page 2 of the handbook, is some general overview of the city and what kind of city we are, when we were incorporated. There's a listing in A 1.4 of all the various joint powers authorities that the city is a part of, APCD, SBCAG, NCPA, all of those outside agencies that we are a part of. Page 4 of the handbook goes over council member salaries and reimbursement of council member expenses, the various guidelines and rules that govern the city council access to City Hall, city council access to the city's recreational facilities. These are things like whether council members can have a parking ID plaque, whether they can have a key card to City Hall and an alarm access code. There's rules on page 5 regarding how the council is allowed to use some of the equipment and supplies in City Hall, when council can use city letterhead, and when they cannot, how mail addressed to the council members is taken in at City Hall and directed to the council member mailboxes, what administrative support some of the staff in City Hall, some of the administrative staff in City Hall can provide to council members. Page 6 has an item on section A4 about council advisory bodies. These are the various commissions that we have in the city. And one of the important things is it has the process in here for how advisory bodies make recommendations to the city council. In the third paragraph down on A4, it says that when a council advisory body wants to make a recommendation to the city council, its chair or another member selected by the commission can appear at the council meeting, at a council meeting, and make an oral report giving that recommendation to the city council jointly with the staff liaison, if they'd like the staff liaison to participate as well. And then the council can consider that recommendation from the commission or committee. There are rules on page 7 about what happens when there's a vacancy on the council. Those are state law rules. There are rules about how we use and arrange our council chambers. So who is allowed to use the council chambers other than the city council? It says other governmental agencies, any of the council advisory bodies, or any entities that have a contractual relationship with the city are allowed to come and request use of our council chambers. It covers things like what the seating arrangement is of the city council and who is allowed to sit on the dais, where the speaker's podium can be positioned, where the staff members can sit. These are some minutiae that the handbook gets into detail about. A8 covers our conflict of interest code in the city, which states what city officials and city employees have to file Form 700 statements of economic interest. Section A9 on page 8 involves the relationship between city council and city staff. So there are some important rules in here about the council is supposed to conduct their business and give direction through the city manager at all times, and council members are not supposed to give direction to lower level city staff members, but are rather supposed to do that through the city manager, except for the purposes of asking questions. There's nothing wrong with council members going to directors or other city employees and asking questions in that employee's area of expertise. So the next part is part B, and that goes into our city council meetings. And again, there's various rules at different levels of specificity. So the first one just says that we have to follow the Brown Act, and everybody knows that. We have guidelines in here about council meetings having to be broadcast live through the city's website and on TAP TV, unless it is impossible due to technical difficulties. Just an example of some of the things that are in here. There's rules about having to have a quorum. There are rules about how late our council meetings can last. So we have a rule in B1.3 that says no regular council meeting can last past 11 p.m. And we know that because sometimes when we hit 11 p.m., council takes a vote to waive this rule. And that vote has to be approved by 2/3 of the council members, is what the handbook says. It also has rules about special meetings. So it says special meetings, which are meetings that we can call on any day with only 24-hour notice, can be called at any time by the mayor alone or by 3 council members, notifying staff that they would like to have a special meeting about a particular topic. There's some rules and guidelines about closed sessions on the next page. There's rules about preparation of the agenda. Near the top of page 12 is some rules regarding the timeline for agenda preparation. And this is where it states that every reasonable effort is going to be made by staff to post a draft agenda 2 Fridays before the meeting, and to post the final agenda by the Wednesday before the council meeting. And we do make great effort to try to do that at a staff level, but it does not always happen. What else can I go over here? At B 2.3, that's where we have the process for council members to request future agenda items, and it basically says the process that we know, that at the end of a meeting, council members can request a future agenda item, and it needs 3 votes, and it's placed on the future agenda items list. Other persons that can place items on agendas on their own are the city manager, the city attorney, the management services director, and the city clerk. If you go to B 2.4 on page 14, we have a rule that is unique to the city of Lompoc here about adding items to a city council agenda when you're already at the meeting. So it's not an item that's on the written agenda, but you want to add it when you get to the meeting. You can do that under certain circumstances if it has come up at the last minute and action is necessary before the next meeting. But our handbook here in Lompoc says that that decision whether to add the item has to occur immediately after the Pledge of Allegiance at the meeting. And if the council decides to add it, then that agenda item that is added cannot be heard prior to 9 p.m. So we actually had that come up a few meetings ago where we added an agenda item, and we just so happened to get to it that night at about 8:59, which was lucky. But if we hadn't been so lucky, we would have maybe had to wait until 9 p.m. in order to hear that agenda item. Same kind of a unique rule that we have with switching around the order of business on our agenda. The handbook does allow us to take agenda items out of order. So take item D before item A, for instance. But in 2.5, it says that a 2/3 vote of the council is required to take the item out of order, which is not something required by state law, but it is a rule that we have in our handbook. Going on to the bottom of page 15, it talks about how the mayor is the presiding officer at council meetings. It is the mayor's duty and responsibility to maintain order and decorum at the meeting. The mayor can make decisions about procedure on the advice of the city attorney. And, for example, whether a motion should be voted on now or it should be voted on later, whether a substitute motion should be voted on first, whether a member of the public is disrupting the meeting such that they can be removed from the chambers. And the mayor can make all those decisions, limiting public time. Speaking at the podium is another item that the mayor can make decisions on. But all of these items are subject to being overridden by a majority of the other council members, can overrule the mayor's decisions on any of these items of order that the mayor makes decisions on. B 4.1 states that we use Robert's Rules of Order as a guide for the procedure at our meetings, but they are not the set in stone rules. of our procedure at the meetings. The procedure is governed by this handbook. B 4.2 is the rule about council members wishing to speak, requesting to do so with your green light buttons, and then the mayor will call on you when it is your turn to speak. That's just to maintain an orderly process of deliberation at the meetings. B 4.3, I just wanted to go over this rule that's in the handbook here at B 4.3, which says that when you are addressing staff, the handbook suggests and urges that the council members should not impugn directly or indirectly the competence, integrity, or efforts of any staff member or other person. And if you do have criticisms of city employees, that those criticisms can be made to the city manager in private. And you can give your input that way. You know, and it gets into pretty detailed rules here about B 4.4, interruptions. The council members should not interrupt other council members when they're speaking. That's the level of detail that we get into with our handbook. Let's see. In B 4.8, it goes over the decorum, not of the council members, but the decorum of the audience. And this is where we have the rule that often comes up with unauthorized remarks from the audience, heckling, whistling, yelling, applauding. The handbook says that those things should not be permitted by the presiding officer, by the mayor, because it can make members of the minority out in the audience afraid to come up and speak if they think that they're going to be yelled down or heckled. There's guidelines for public comment about how the public is supposed to address the city council as a whole and not address individual council members, not attack individual council members personally, but attack the idea or the concepts that are being discussed by the council if they disagree with those concepts. It also states that the presiding officer has the authority to make sure that the members of the public stay on topic. So if we have an agenda item, I don't know, about cannabis, and someone comes up and starts talking on a complete tangent about a completely different topic and wasting time of the public and the council, it is within the constitutional authority to prevent them from speaking or to stop them from speaking. That doesn't come up a lot for us because we have a time limit, and so we will usually just wait until the time expires if that kind of thing happens. The next portions on pages 19 through 23 go over very technical rules and guidelines about how to make motions, how to second a motion, what substitute motions are, the fact that substitute motions are voted on first, the process for amending motions. Lots of different types of technical motions that we generally don't talk about or really need to use because we try not to be that formal at our council meetings. There's the procedures about voting and how the council votes. We use an electronic voting procedure that displays the vote of each member after all members vote simultaneously. We show it on the electronic board up there. That's covered in the City Council Handbook. There are requirements about what the votes are to adopt different types of ordinances and resolutions. For example, an urgency ordinance that's going to take effect immediately instead of taking effect in 30 days requires 4 members of the council to vote for it. The bottom of page 24 There are rules about conflicts of interest and what a member of the council must do to recuse themselves when they have a conflict of interest, and that is to leave the room. There are more details about that. One thing that doesn't come up very often but is interesting is on page 26, and that's changing your vote or a motion for reconsideration of a council vote. So B 6.8 says that if council has voted on an item and a council member decides that they want to change their vote, they can speak up immediately after that item is concluded and say that they've changed their mind and they want to vote a different way. And then the reconsidered item can be voted on again right away. But if it's not immediate and right away, then what the handbook says is the people in the audience who are interested in that item may have left. So rather than re-voting on the item at that same meeting when the interested members of the public may have left, it should be re-agendized for a future meeting, and then it can be re-voted on again at that time. A lot of city councils and even Robert's rules themselves say that in order to make a motion for reconsideration, you have to be on the winning side of the original vote. But our handbook, which is fine, says that any member of the council, whether you're on the winning side or the losing side, can make a motion to reconsider any vote. Just to really quickly go through the last few topics, on page 28 and 29, there are the rules about how to hold a public hearing and the process for, or the procedure to go through when holding a public hearing. The mayor usually walks the city council through that when we have public hearings. Starting on page 31 is part C, that's called policies. And C1 is interesting policy. It says that all state statutes and city ordinances pertaining to the abatement of graffiti will be aggressively enforced within the city. I thought that was an interesting policy to put in the council handbook, but at the time that this was adopted, I suppose there was an interest in aggressively enforcing graffiti in the city. There are rules about when the city receives a request, say from a member of the legislature or from some organization in the community to support or oppose a bill that's pending in Sacramento. What is the process for the city deciding whether to support that bill or not support that bill? And can the staff or the mayor sign a letter of support or opposition by themselves, or do we need to bring it to council to decide whether to support or oppose the bill that's in Sacramento? Those rules are on page 31 under C3. There's in C5 on page 32, there are rules about if someone makes a donation to the Lompoc Library or the Lompoc Museum, how is that money to be used if the museum or the library are not able to use all of the money? It says that it's supposed to continue to be used for museum and library purposes and should not be just transferred to the general fund. There are rules about when the employees appointed by the city council, those being myself and the city manager, are to have their performance evaluations. Those are on pages 32 and 33. Some of those are overridden by our contracts with the city on things about when the evaluations are to take place. C9 governs the preparation of minutes for the council meetings and how corrections to the minutes are supposed to be made. It encourages council members or members of the public to bring corrections to the minutes to the city clerk's attention prior to the council meeting so that she can correct those things before having to do so at the council meeting. C10 governs invocations at the city council meetings and goes over some of the law about how sectarian prayer is not permitted under the Constitution at public city council meetings. C12, the final section of the handbook, goes over what the rules are for the issuance of proclamations and requests for proclamations that the city receives from outside organizations and businesses. And those rules are on the very last page of the entire handbook packet here. So council asked for this item to have a beginning discussion without really any written staff report about what amendments or changes you might want to make about the policies and rules in the handbook. So that is a broad overview with a few details, and I'm available for questions about it, or otherwise the council can start their deliberations and give direction to staff.
Thank you for that. In my review of this, there were some, both entertaining and very obvious. This was written in 1987 and not been updated. For instance, under page 5A 3.2, supplies and equipment, a briefcase and a filing cabinet are supplied to each council member, and I'm wondering where my briefcase is. But things like we now have cell phones issued to us, and we have the opportunity to have a city-issued laptop. So, I'm digging through this, and there's some things that we routinely do that don't need changing, but there's some really outdated stuff in here, like publishing our home address and phone numbers when we're now in a modern era where we're having a city cell phone and we have a city email address. And our addresses are public as part of our campaign and are out there, but stating that we must publish a home phone number seems a little outdated, especially with some of the current issues that we've faced in more recent years. So in looking at that and knowing that this is a lot to go through, I'm going to make a suggestion to council, given this is our book, this is our responsibility, these are things we're holding ourselves accountable for. I'd like to suggest that we have an ad hoc for this to review the handbook, review what's in it, make some recommendations, bring it back, have legal and city staff that are connected with the different departments review any of it to make sure we haven't eliminated things that are inappropriate, state laws, that sort of thing, and then bring it back for a council discussion so that this moves quicker. Because I know this is not something we want to spend all evening on, but I think that it is important given the last time it was fully revised was in 2010. And the amendments that we've had have been very minor and may need to be looked at as a whole. So I'm going to recommend an ad hoc. As always, offering up an ad hoc means work. I don't hesitate to offer myself to participate, but if there are two others that would like to take this on, you're welcome to do so, but I don't make the suggestion without also committing to the workload. So do I have another council member who would like to work with me on it if I don't have two that want to just do it?
I'd be happy to join you.
Awesome. See, you guys waited long enough for the newbie to press the button. And so, and just as a second to that request, I'd like to ask for your support to look at adding a code of ethics. I know we all take the ethics course, but I think it's really important to the public and to not just us, but to our appointees to committees and commissions that we publicly state our ethics. And so I'd like to add a portion to that and work through that with Councilmember Ball and bring it back as part of an addition to the book.
I would give you a third.
Awesome. Did I get a second?
I'll give you a second.
Thank you. All right, so, Yes, it means being really good this year. Is that going to be difficult for you? Yes. I might just have to light that hoop on fire for 2021, huh?
Mayor, may I real quick? We still need to at least open it for public comment if we get anybody.
Absolutely. I just wanted to alleviate all the fear on my council of, are we going to spend 3 hours talking about this? So I will open the floor for public comment on this issue. The number to call is 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201. You have 3 minutes to speak to this issue, and remember to mute your TV, PC, or radio. If you have any thoughts or suggestions of things you might like to see changed, you are more than welcome to call in and provide those. Did we have any written communication on this item?
Yes, ma'am, we received one from Mr. Fink. It was distributed to council as well as to the website.
Thank you. Again, the number to call is 805-875-8201. Seeing no one call, we will close public comment on this agenda item and bring it back. Do we have any additional written communications for the evening?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Your final opportunity for oral communications tonight is 2 minutes. You may call 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201. Remember to mute your PC, radio, or TV. Seeing no one call in, we will close the final oral communication and bring it back to council comments and meeting reports. This is where you would add any of your new council requests in this. All right, we'll start with Councilmember Vega.
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Cordova.
I wanted to consider a council request. So one of the things that I noticed over the term that I've served so far is a lot of times our ordinances, I feel, are kind of like what we're doing, the cleanup process with our council handbook and all these other things. The city ordinances are one of the things that I always feel that we have, but we don't always enforce, whether it be because lack of manpower or because of whatever reason. And so I wanted to suggest that we tackle looking at these ordinances maybe from a period of time forward, and that we consider, are these consistent also with current laws? Are they really enforceable? And are they necessary? So maybe getting a quarterly report as we move through this list of, so many of them. I understand we're not going to do them all in 1 month, or, but at least getting a quarterly report from our city attorney and our city manager as to these, and when issues do arise, maybe consider then bringing those back to council as, hey, these are stuff that is really not enforceable or doesn't align anymore with certain. So that would be a council request that I would have, and I think it would also help us to kind of clean up some stuff as we move along in a period of time. There is no designated time that I have in my mind, but it's just kind of starts a cleanup process there for consideration.
So would you be asking for staff to look at the different ordinances underneath their responsibility and look at potentially scheduling on their own of things to bring back based on, how do you see this playing out? I'm trying to help make sure we're not adding additional workload, but doing what you're saying is cleaning up things.
So I had kind of thought maybe it would be a task for the city attorney and the city manager more than staff really, or departmentally, because they could kind of look at them and see, is this something we need to pull and talk about, Or is this something that we don't? And at least just bring back, and maybe if they find 10, or if they find 3, or whatever this quarter, then bring back and say, hey, we found these 3 to be non-enforceable or and bring them back to the council for consideration or discussion.
Yeah, that's something we can do.
And you're saying to do it in chunks, maybe, not
Yeah,
all at once,
Not all at once, no.
but maybe 2 a month or something.
Correct, because this could be, I don't know how many ordinances we have. This could be till the end of my 4-year term.
And then some.
And then some. But at least it helps us to move through the process, and maybe together you guys can prioritize what sections you want to hit first, maybe police department or whatever, because those are some of the areas that I've found to be a grave concern for me.
Councilmember Ball.
No, I was just going to say that prioritizing it with what's current and what's impactful, and you guys know what we're trying to focus on and deal with, so just picking random ones doesn't make sense, but prioritizing immediate needs, and that way the council, we can adjust an approach and put some teeth into an ordinance or change something if it's not effective and enforceable, or get rid of it or whatever, but prioritizing, I think, is helpful.
Can I give you one anecdotal? This is not unusual for cities because there are so many usually. One past city, you could not have an ice cream truck in town, and the ordinance was written and last updated in 1954. So every time a vendor came in, there weren't that many, but every time one came in, I had to then go before council to get a special permission, and I would just get razzed by council, you're gonna chase away the good humor man, but it hadn't been updated since 1954. So, this is not a bad idea. We can take the elephant.
I'll give her a second if we're there.
I'll give it third.
You have got your second and your third.
Yeah, and I just had one more question. Would it be helpful if we put like a time frame to start rather than going back all the way to 1953?
Well, no,
Because then it might require like 5 more terms, and I don't know if I can do 5 more terms.
I think we'll strategize, we'll come up with a plan, and then as we come forth on the first round, we can explain what we're doing and how we're doing it, see if that works.
City Clerk.
So can I just clarify, are we talking about every single ordinance starting from the beginning, or are we talking about just the current municipal code?
I was thinking about all the ordinances, but again, they'll prioritize and kind of bring back to us as they begin to move through the process. Because I'd hate to send them down a rabbit hole of 1948, when in reality it might not even be relevant, but
I was personally thinking of the municipal code, but
Those are the only ones we actually control, right? Anything that's a state pass-through is not something we can
Correct.
necessarily change.
Yeah.
Right?
So again, you're talking about the current municipal code?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other clarity or questions on that? Any other? Nope, you're good? Okay. Councilmember Starbuck.
I have no reports.
Thank you. Councilmember Ball.
Help me through this because I'm new here. Potentially a couple council requests, and I think I talked about this with a few of you. Top of the list for me is figuring out how to get code enforcement back, and then potentially having a discussion how to adapt that into a multi-pronged, effective code enforcement, including the topic of homelessness. Again, that's as detailed as I go on that. And then potentially part of that or separately is looking at having someone head a discussion on homelessness here, whether it's a liaison, manager, coordinator. Obviously, we don't have a lot of funds here at the city to do much with that, but to have someone primarily focused on that issue, dealing with county entities, being a liaison, keeping our eye on the prize in terms of trying to better the quality of life, both for those that are homeless and those that are in our town, I think would be ideal. So I'm not sure how.
So to the second request, technically you're it. So you're on the C3H that is now Home for Good. You got appointed to that, so you are our liaison to the county and to the homeless coordination that goes on.
I'm
So-
also talking about something that might be considered part-time or full-time. This is a big deal, and a part-time, couple hours a month from a city council person isn't going to deal with this issue to the level I think it needs to be dealt with, but that's my
Right,
thoughts.
and I get what you're saying now. I think that will come up in budget discussion, so having a discussion about our goals and then a discussion about what you'd like to see as part of
That's fine.
those goals. And that goes again with code enforcement, because those are budget line items and policy changes. So that's my recommendation, is that bring those back up as part of our discussion when we discuss our goals, and then potentially discuss what we'd like to see accomplished in the next budget cycle,
Sounds good.
because of the level of investment that is financially. So if staff has a better way to bring it back sooner, let me know, but I think my understanding of it, because both are technically personnel and costs, that it would need to be a budget discussion and a policy discussion.
Since we're just going to be starting the budget process here, I mean, we're already starting it behind the scenes, but the presenting and having the workshops, that might be the best time to do it, just so we can then look at all the different requests that might be out there.
Fair
Okay.
enough. I'm just giving you all a preview.
Okay. Councilmember Cordova?
So I had a question on that, because I agree with that, and I get so many requests from public saying, bring back code enforcement. Would that be the same? Because I noticed on our future council items list is also the reinstatement of a public information officer, but wouldn't that be the same thing? Why would we discuss that and not discuss code enforcement? Wouldn't that be something that would get rolled back into budget as well? Why is it on this list?
It's really not an additional budget cost, because the person more or less would move back to their position. So this one would be adding to new appropriations to the budget.
Makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions? Did that help?
Nothing else to report.
Okay. So I attended the last December meetings for TANK, SBCAG, APCD, the Santa Barbara County's COVID-19 legislative briefing, the quarterly Healthy Lompoc Advisory Cabinet, which is looking at how to re-engage with our community when we come out of COVID. So that'll be exciting as they work on plans for something for us to look forward to. And as soon as we have more details, we'll make sure and have them make a presentation. LUSD was kind enough to invite me to participate in their interview process for their assistant superintendent of business services. So that was a welcome interplay between agencies in our community. Some of that dialogue we said we needed to connect with and be involved with, so I appreciate that. And also the monthly meeting for the Lompoc COVID-19 work group, trying to figure out better ways to communicate with our community about the COVID-19 issues, what's missing, what's needed, how to deliver it, and ultimately about the vaccination process, which we hope will ramp up soon here. I do have a council request that is taking all of the cannabis discussion items that we had and formulating it into a review of the cannabis ordinance itself. I know that we put that in place nearly 3 years ago. I know there are some changes that have happened at the state level that I'd like to make sure that we're in alignment with, because that was our initial goal, was that our ordinance be reflective of the state, which is why now that cannabis events are allowed, making sure our ordinance reflects similar appropriations to do those kinds of things. The reviewing the deposit, is it enough? Are we charging enough? Why would we, not charge an annual fee for renewal? What's missing? I know that our ordinance said that the tax measure should not be passed through for the sales, but some entities are doing it and some aren't, so we need to get clarity and clear that up. And just anything else the staff who's been in the process of doing this ordinance has learned that they might be able to make recommendations to, such as a committee to oversight, an internal commission to oversee between the finance department, the public safety department, planning and building, or code enforcement, to help us do what we need to do locally. So I think it's better to address it as a whole and evaluate how we've done and see what we need to do to make not just the system more efficient, but assist staff with what they need in order to have the best process in place. So that was I know it's long and detailed, but I wanted staff to understand what I was asking for when I asked for review of the ordinance. Councilmember Cordova.
Second.
Thank you.
Third.
Thank you. I have no additional reports, requests, and we will adjourn to the next council meeting, regular council meeting at 6:30 PM on January 19th, 2021. Happy New Year, everyone.